with the classic. If you can't get out of the building via those stairs, there is actually another set of stairs that goes along this wall here, and there are fire assembly points either out here in the yard or out in front of the building. If you wish to have a comfort break for this evening, it is a rather full agenda. There is a toilet immediately outside of this door. Turn to your right, and it's the door on the first on the left. So, thank you very much. We're going to open up in a minute with the public participation. I have 5 people who wish to speak. If you could keep your conversations attached to a minute and all time. 3 to 4 minutes, that would be great. We actually have splashed out on these wonderful 3-minute timers, so I should try to remember to turn them over when you speak, and I shall indicate, or someone will, to you when time. So the first person that I have on my list is Susie Weldon from Sunset Food Trail. Would you like to come and speak to us here?
Yes, good evening everyone. Thank you very much indeed for having me. I'm Susie Weldon. I represent the Somerset Food Trail, which is organised by a group of community organisations led by Wales Food Network. And I'm delighted to see that everyone has got a copy of the brochure, which is hot off the press, literally arrived just a few days ago. The reason why I'm here is that we applied to Glastonbury Town Council for a grant in March of £2,500. We were told that we would listen to that application in the summer, I think next month. But I'm here because we're a victim of our own success, so we wrote and said, is there any chance you could listen to it now? Let me tell you briefly about the Somerset Food Trail. It is a 10-day farm to fork festival celebrating the best of locally produced, sustainably produced food and farming. We held a pilot in 2018 where we had about 32 participants, and really that was just to test the concept and see whether this would even work. It's based on the kind of Somerset Art Meets Open Studios model. So farmers and food producers open their venues to the public at set times during that 10-day period, times that they decide, and they hold special events. They could be vineyard tours, there could be the cider and sausage festivals, there are farm walks, there are all kinds of events happening. We tried to do it again in 2019, we farmed it out to an external organisation and it didn't work. So we took it back in-house, and then in 2020, we cancelled because of COVID. And then we were all set for 2021, and we had to cancel again. I'm so happy that this year is going ahead. When we made the application, we were hoping for up to 100 venues. We thought, okay, we'll triple what we did the first year. We've actually got 187. So we have nearly doubled what we expected to get. And obviously that has caused all kinds of additional costs. We all know about the kind of current cost of living crisis and all the costs going up. Paper costs are horrendous. They have sort of quadrupled it since we got the first post back in December last year. The design costs have gone up. I mean, just producing this document, which I think you see is a very weighted document, was a sort of massive effort. We're all volunteers. The food train is organised by a steering group of 4 trustees, of which I am one. And then we have a network of cluster coordinators. And in order to make it manageable, we divided the area into clusters. So Glastonbury is one. It's Glastonbury and sort of slightly the surrounding area, also Payson Street. Just to give you an idea of how things have changed, in our original application, we said we knew that 10 venues in Glastonbury would take part. We've got 25, including a couple in the street. So Glastonbury is very well represented, as are various other areas. And I think if you just flick through it, there are so many things to do. Why is it important? Well, we believe that supporting this food trail very much fits with your own declaration of climate and ecological emergency. We all know how important food is to our carbon footprints. It's estimated around 30% of our individual carbon footprint is down to the food that we eat, both in terms of how that food is produced before it even gets onto our plates. We also know that food is so important in so many other ways. It's really important for a sense of community. Food is at the heart of everything we do in terms of celebration and in terms of building community. it's really important in terms of how we manage our land. You know, the Somerset landscape has been shaped by food and farming for centuries, and we very much value that beautiful landscape, and it's critical to biodiversity, to protecting biodiversity. So we have to find more nature-friendly ways of obtaining our food. And we also need to think about food security. You know, the last few months, with all the kind of global shocks of war and food shortages, have really shown us that it is not good enough to think that we can just buy food on the local market and we just buy it and ship it in. That is not adequate nowadays. We have to increase our own food security. And then, of course, we know that certainly in the coming months, already now, food is, you know, there are huge issues around affordability. Certainly, I'm pleased that one of our events is Nifty and Thrifty in Wells, which is all around helping families look at ways in which they can reduce their waste, they can, you know, make the most of their food resources, their cooking and so on. We've got loads of community organisations that are part of this, loads of local food hubs, and growing organisations that are helping people to grow food for themselves. So I really urge you, I hope that you will support our application. Our ambition is that this is not just a one-off event. This is going to be an annual event in the calendar, and in so doing, not only will it be a tremendous contribution to our kind of tourism offering, but also our building of our own, cementing of our own sense of community, but it will help to protect our landscapes and biodiversity going forward. It will help us in our fight against climate change, and we hope and expect that it will inspire people. You know, people will want to join this, and by sharing the great news of all the fantastic work that farmers and food producers are doing locally, and also by encouraging pubs and cafes and restaurants to celebrate local food during the festival. Participating pubs and cafes and restaurants have to develop a food menu where they highlight local food and drink, and in that way we want to support the local economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next I have Laura Morrison speaking about digital voluntary gardening groups.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. There's a request in here, by the way, hidden in here. There's a request to the council. I have been delighted to be part of the Fisher's Hill planting project for the past few months and enjoy meeting others in this super space with amazing views. The area has some majestic trees on it and is being slowly enhanced by the addition of flowering plants and shrubs, mixed hedging, sweet-smelling plants and wild flowers to benefit bees, butterflies and other insects. An incredibly important addition to the grassy rectangle that it was previously. There is still plenty of room for dog owners and others to enjoy, even with the addition of the wavy borders and wildlife corridors at the top end. One of the best aspects for me has been the way the project has been subtly, gently and expertly managed so that everyone feels welcomed, valued and included regardless of their gardening skills. A good variety of people come to the area and do what they can. Passers-by have been invited to view the work and we've been so moved and impressed they have come back with plants and got stuck in with others. Even a dog called Hazel has been employed in digging ponds for us. Very enthusiastic dog. The amount and variety of plants that have been bought and donated is quite mind-blowing, with 163 cultivars and about 856 specimens planted to date. The benefit to wildlife is already apparent, with more insects, butterflies and damselflies having been seen since planting started. Insects will not be if there is nothing for them to feed on and no habitat for them. With 97% of our wildflower meadows having gone and 90% of village ponds filled in over the past years, it's no wonder that our wild creatures' population numbers are in free fall. It is hoped that vegetables will be planted in this area too, and this will be very welcome as food security is becoming uppermost in our minds now. We already have herbs, strawberries, raspberries, elderberries, blackcurrants and apples to share. Something else that is being shared is water from local residents who live in the vicinity, and we are very grateful to all of them. Regular watering is vital for new plants to enable them to establish a healthy root system. That is why this area needs to be watered at least once a week to the end of the season, as we may have many dry days during summer and into September. This April was very dry. The Met Office tells us that the UK had around a third less rainfall than its average for the month, with southern areas especially dry as high pressure dominated for much of the time. It would be a terrible shame for this area to die off for want of some water. A shame for the considerable financial investment as well as all the labour, hundreds of hours. Shame for the emotional investments you wasted. We can't let this happen. Of course, there would be a cost to this, but it's generally thought that the Fisher's Hill project is worth maintaining. Such a wonderful area of calm, beauty, colour, therapy, an uplifting natural environment, a meeting place, a place to play with your dog or children, enjoy picnics, read or meditate. This is an asset to the whole town. One of our many visitors has suggested he could offer Tai Chi classes on the hill on fine days and already received interest from many others. The goodwill, cooperation, skill sharing, humour and support that has been amongst the volunteers is truly heartening. One such example of this involving the local community and to demonstrate to the council how involved, committed and helpful local people have been is that Claire was extremely anxious at one point regarding getting water to the plants. She put out a call for help and the next day, under the wooden bench, she found a long pile of water bottles, salvaged from bins and elsewhere, full of water for her to use. I'm happy to continue to help with this project and would like to honour all those who have helped so far and thank in advance all those who are going to help in the future, especially with water. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, you have to forgive me for not quite being able to read the writing, but I think it's Joe Mooney, Jurassic Park.
Hi everyone, thank you very much for having me. I'm Joe Mooney, a local gentleman, and I've recently taken on a new role as the Community Engagement Ambassador for a brand new internet company called Jurassic Fibre. And from my experience, I've seen a lot of internet companies turn up, start plugging things into kind of poles and digging up the roads, no acknowledgement in the community, and then a few months later, bang, 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 trying to make sales. Jurassic Fibre have given me the wonderful task of being that middle ground. So we will be building our network in your area, which is very exciting for some people. Some people they can take or leave internet. But during that build phase, I'd love to collaborate with you guys and pick your brains and have a little back and forth of how best to inform the community that we're in the area. Who are we? What are we doing? When are we leaving? Not just crack on and then try and make sales. I'm not a salesman. I wouldn't know how to make a sale if they paid me. But so obviously my main priority is trying to collaborate with you guys to keep the locals informed. And another one is we have a lot of kind of events that we sponsor and get involved in. I'd love to hear your feedback of where you think there might be a welcome presence for us to go and get involved, to get stuck in, to sponsor local events, and generally be familiar with you guys, just to kind of introduce myself. I'm doing this around several other councils. Hopefully, if I can get the invite, thank you very much for having me. And yeah, there's no real ask beyond, I'd love your help in developing a strategy that suits you guys, of informing the residents when we are building, how best to keep them informed and obviously try and avoid just turning up and cracking on basically. And if there's any local events like that, sounds absolutely wonderful, like perhaps next year we can have a chat about just trying to sponsor local events, be part of the community, not just we're here to sell internet. We are here to be part of the community. It's a real big selling point for me to take on the role because I'm not exactly Mr. Corporate Sales type guy, but I am Mr. Local Friendly guy. That's basically it from me. If any of you would like to take my email address down, I'm brand new, so I haven't been given any business cards yet. But yeah, no promotional material or prices. It's not really what I'm here for. But my email address is joseph.mooney. That's JOSEPH.Mooney, MOONEY, at Jurassic-Fibre.com. And whether you'd like to go for a coffee in a local cafe or have a little chat over a phone or any kind of contact that you'd like to do, please feel free to reach out to me anytime between office hours. And if Saturday is available, I'll happily come out for a coffee on Saturday. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear what has worked, what hasn't worked before, how we can learn from other people's growing pains and really be a welcome presence in this town. And as I've previously said, not just turn up, crack on and then start expecting sales. Thank you very much for the time. If anyone has any questions while I'm around.
Well, we don't normally respond to talking at this point in the proceedings, but thank you very much.
That does make sense. Thank you very much for your time. Cheers, guys. Thank you.
So, next we have Louise Somerville, and she's speaking to some women's rights.
Want to grab this job?
Yes, of course.
Well, it's different in here, isn't it? New places, new spot. Okay. So, I'm here because I wanted to talk to you about the automation that we've done. And I wanted to say that I celebrate that and that I'm really pleased. So, I'm going to speak specifically regarding motion 10A that's on your agenda tonight. And I've made sure that everything that I have written down, the clerk also has a copy, so that it's all written down and you put it down to that, and there will be more in that information that I'm going to see, because I'm aware that you being compliant with the law is a very serious matter, because public bodies are scrutinised more than most. But I wanted to draw your attention to certain inequalities, because I think that equalities training does not always equate to equality of opportunity. It doesn't always equate to the groups that always need it, and the providers don't always provide the type of equality training that elected members are going to need to access. So it's public money. That's the other reason I'm here. I'm here to say please spend our money wisely in a way that will improve lives and make a material difference to residents. And I'm aware that good quality equalities training is very expensive and that you need to be mindful of cheaper providers who may not represent the Equalities Act 2010 correctly. So I'm a member of the Feminist Legal Collective, and through that I've become aware of a number of court cases and a number of challenges that have been raised to public bodies as well as private bodies, such as employers. So I felt that I would just pass those along. One of the things I wanted to say is make sure that your provider accurately presents information on the protective characteristics, the 9 characteristics that are listed in the Equality Act. And those are age, gender reassignment, being married or in a civil partnership, being pregnant or on maternity leave, disability, race, including colour, nationality, ethnic or national origin, religion or belief, sex, and sexual orientation. One of the things I loved actually about seeing that motion was that I googled cultural competence. What a great discovery. If anybody else here didn't clock that one, that's great fun. I read it and I was like, what on earth is cultural competence? Because the population here is so diverse. So what I've done is I looked at the ONS and the government office statistics relating to inequalities, struggles. 1 in 5 people report disability. That was the one that really hit me the most, and I noticed that it wasn't listed. So I would really want to see, as a provider of public services, that you cover disability. About 6% of those are diabetes. 15 to 22% of adults of working age have got disabilities. And the people that care for them are female, and the people with the most disabilities are female, except for children aged 14 and below. And you also mention in the proposed motion mental health. 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health problem of some kind each year. And that's another huge number. And obviously an issue that this council knows is very close to my heart, because I've spoken more than once about it, is about housing. So I'm not going to dwell on that, but I have put some statistics there regarding housing. An estimated 3.1% of the UK population aged 16 years and over identifies as lesbian, gay or bisexual. About 1.3% are Hindu. The total trans population of the UK is estimated to be between 0.3% and 0.75%, but we'll have more statistics once the ONS publishes the census results. And 51% of the UK population is female. So I just wanted to bring your attention to some of those statistics for some of the broader issues. And obviously as a feminist activist, I am particularly concerned with issues that impact women and children, but I'm also concerned with issues that affect lesbians and affect gay people. And one of the biggest issues that has come forward in quality training in the last 10 years is that lesbians and gay men have been called same-gender attractive. And I urge you to ensure that your provider makes sure that lesbians and gay men are recognised and acknowledged as being same-sex attractive, because that's an issue that has cropped up again and again, and it can definitely lead to legal action, which you obviously want to avoid at all costs. And then I just thought, just to close, I wanted to put one issue in that has really been on my mind in Glastonbury. That's my 3 minutes, I'll make it really quick. You can't get contraception in Glastonbury. And I'm wondering why teenage girls without an income can pay 30 odd quid for the morning after. If it's a Friday night or a Saturday morning, why do they have to go to the chemist? Why do they have to travel hundreds of miles for a pregnancy termination, be unable to access free condoms or male contraceptives and IUDs, etc.? So to me, I see that as one of the biggest inequality issues that we have, and it does relate to one of the 9 protected characteristics on pregnancy and maternity. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And finally, we have Susanna Clements speaking about Cosmos.
Hi, a young woman sitting in the Abbey Park a few months ago said to me, we really ought to be composting dog poo, and it really stuck with me. I was researching it and thinking it's really simple. It's a matter of drilling some holes, having a sort of sleeve, a removable sleeve around it with a lid, and having access to a pile of grass or something that I could throw onto the beach. Deposit of dog poo, and people can put their own dog's messes there with a shovel. And I realised it's actually really urgent now, because you've got these overflowing bins full of plastic bags. Some people I know who has had to carry them, throw them in the back of a van and then take them off to be put in landfill. So I just suggest, I propose that we, as a community, we look into doing composting dog poo, using the specific worms that you use. I think there's ways that can be done. I think it's probably really simple. It would be experimental. And I don't know to what extent, which bits of land the town council has say over. I would have thought the most obvious place to start would be the corner of the tall fields over by where the grass clippings are left. There's no bins over there. There is an exit, a kissing gate, and it just and it's out of the way. And if it doesn't work, it's not going to be offensive to anything. So it's just a proposal. The other thing I just wanted to mention is Bretton Roads. Those barriers are a trip hazard. They're blocking the stiles, so it's really difficult to get to the stiles, and also they're making the road narrow and dangerous for cyclists. And behind the barriers, you can't cycle, or you could just about walk, but you can get over them, but they're all getting full of twigs and stuff. And so, and also drivers, for some reason, think it's okay to drive really fast on there. It used to be so safe for cycling and walking with children, and it's now got quite dangerous. So it's just something needs to be done to make it more accessible to cyclists and walkers on the road. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we're going to move into the meeting proper. We are recording this meeting. It's going to go out live on YouTube. You can enjoy it again at your leisure. So welcome to the people who are watching us online. And we now start with receiving apologies for absence. Connor, do we have any?
Yes, Your Worship. I've received apologies from Councillor Cottle. He is unfortunately unwell. And I have received apologies from County Councillor Hart, who is sadly experiencing car trouble, but she may be able to attend slightly later on.
Thank you. Councillors, item 2 is declarations of interest. If there are any items on tonight's agenda which you feel you have a personal interest in or financial interest in, please do so now, or if you realise during the meeting that you have an interest, you're always welcome to raise your hand, point of order, and let card down. So, Councillor, are there any declarations of interest? I need to say that I'm a member of the Town Field Board, and I imagine that there will be items relevant to that coming up later. No other. Thank you. We now move on to approve and sign as a correct record minutes of the meeting on 17th of May. Councillors, this is tabled. And I'd like to draw your attention to page 1. Page 2. Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, I may be wrong, but I can't remember actually volunteering for the Austin Memorial Homes. So obviously there's one of the councillors representing that. If I did volunteer, then I'm quite wrong, but I couldn't remember doing
But you're quite happy to carry on.
it. Yeah.
Councillor Smart.
Just so the Councillor Henderson well, I'm happy to carry on.
Are there any councillors who thought they had put their hand up to be on this memorial home who are not on that list, mysteriously replaced by Councillor Henderson Smart? Councillor Price.
I do actually remember both of the councillors volunteering to come into that meeting.
Well, we're getting on with it. We stand corrected.
Could I please just raise something else, sorry, Your Worship, on page 2? Since the copy that you've all received, Councillor Henderson has stood down from the planning committee, so the copy I have here for you to sign, Your Worship, does not have Councillor Henderson under the planning committee.
Thank you.
So the councillors, please note that in your records. Page 3.
Yes, please.
Councillor Bush.
Thank you. Yeah, rather show. I don't remember putting my name up for that, but I certainly did for the committee about the Glastonbury Carnival Committee with Councillor Napa. Okay? So, if that was all,
Thank you. So there's only one representative required on the Carnival Committee, I'm afraid, Councillor. Councillor Napa has beat you to it. Councillor Napa, are you still happy to be a representative on the Carnival?
I certainly am, but if work is, if Councillor Rick is upset about it, then I will step down.
I know him, so already has just crack on and so on the other things.
Thank you. Councillors, do remember to stand when you're speaking. If Councillor Cook is no longer on the show, we need 2 councillors for that. I am comfortable for councillors who wish to be on the show. If there is another person who did wish to do that, to raise your hand now. Councillor Price, thank you very much. So, councillors, if you can amend your minutes, and that be amended on the main minutes. Honour, thank you. Anything else on page 3? Page 4. On page 5.
Yeah.
Yes.
On item 16, it says County Councillor Hart was absent. County Councillor Hart was not invited. You received no invite to that meeting, and we had in fact raised it several times that we've not receiving emails.
Thank you.
If I may just speak to that, sorry, Your
Yes,
Worship. I've been in contact with County Councillor Hart today, and she did inform me that she was also unwell at that time, so I can certainly add that to the minutes. And I've had a discussion with County Councillor Hart how best for her to receive invites, agendas, summons and minutes to meetings in the future. So that should all be sorted for future meetings.
So, you're going to amend these minutes accordingly?
Yes, Your Worship. I'll just add that also County Councillor Hart was unwell and didn't receive an invite to the meeting.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor. Anything else on page 5? Page 6. Councillors, if there are no further amendments, with the amendments that have been spoken about, are you happy for me to sign these minutes as a record meeting notes? Thank you. While I do so, I shall ask anyone to speak to the summary of actions from the last meeting.
Thank you, Your Worship. In terms of a summary of actions from the last meeting, I've invited Glastonbury Football Club in for a meeting to complete the paperwork to nominate Abbey Moor Stadium and the surrounding grounds as an asset of community value. Myself and Sarah Marks will be doing a review of the social media policy and hope to bring you a new draft version for the July meeting. I have responded to the public questions from Glastonbury Safe Tech. I have not yet been able to respond to the questions regarding the PSPO because I'm waiting on a few details from Mendip District Council. I have tasked Sarah Hallam, who clerks the Planning Committee, to liaise with Mendip District Council as to whether there is a requirement to replace trees within a conservation area. Councillor Locker-Bandu sent in some suggestions for additional outside bodies to contact. That's in process, and also if any other councillors have any suggestions, please do send them in. And that is the actions from the last meeting, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. So, we now move to receive these reports. I'm very pleased to see Mr. Reid here. Welcome.
Good evening. It's nice to be at the Town Council, especially ones I've met before, and welcome to you, and congratulations, Mr. Mayor, on another term. Normally I would give a report into the actions of what's been going on, but there's a fair bit I'd just like to cover off with yourselves first, really. Firstly, a general discussion about Beltane, and how it sort of appeared from the Town Council's point of view. We'll then talk about summer solstice, which is happening next week, and Hilton Village Fete, which I think is happening next week as well. And I've actually got a member of the planning committee here, Gary Bowden, who's given up his evening to take questions around any of the town events that happen in the town. And I'm asking just for a little bit of input around what potentially we can do better between us to make events run a bit smoothly. And then I've been asked about the antisocial behaviour in the high street, so I can cover off what we've been doing around that, and then I'll take any questions at the end. Well, if I take questions as we go through, so we don't get too diverted and we don't end up with different questions at the end. So in terms of Beltane, I think from a policing operation we found it quite a success this year. I think it was very much helped because of the road closures the town clerk put in place. In terms of success, I think it was a very well attended event. We anticipated it being, because of course the last couple of years have been during a pandemic, and unfortunately we've had to curb activities such as Glastonbury, which form part of the fabric of the town. One of the challenges is the fact that no one officially owns the event. It's something that happens, and it's been that's always been a challenge. I've worked in two forces now, and in Sherborne there's a Teddy Run, which is a very similar type of event that happens in midnight, and no one owns it, and the police pick up an awful lot of responsibility for it. But as I say, because of the partnership work that I think that started to happen between the town council and some of the key players of Beltane, I think it was a much more smooth event. I've got any questions or comments on Beltane?
Councillors, are there any comments? Do you remember to stand when you speak in the chamber?
Hello, yes, as one of the people from the Town Council helping to organise the road closure and the stewards, we were very happy to be able to work with the police. We did do a report of the things that we would like changed in future, because we felt there were certain places where we could actually improve things. So this was our first year doing it, with the road closure, working the Town Council with the people, and it would be quite good if we could talk before the next Beltane and put all those recommendations in place.
So my intention would be to start picking up meetings about Beltane a lot earlier, and get a few more plans in place and learn from last year about it.
Thank you. Are there any other questions about Beltane? I have one, which is, you mentioned the road closure.
Yep.
And I'm wondering whether the road closure, in your opinion, is vital to the success and the safety of the event.
Yes.
Thank you. Could that be minuted, please, Mark?
I've also digressed to Gary. If he could just add his little bit to Belting.
Mr. Mayor, it's very nice to meet you this evening. If I can just tell you, Belting, a few years pre-pandemic, was an occurrence that just happened at a certain time on a certain day with a great big tree coming through the high street and buses, taxis, pedestrians being scattered in all directions. Quite a nightmare, quite a very unsafe scenario. But we did manage to identify and bring in one of the organising team, not necessarily the organiser, but an organising member of Beltane, and successfully engaged with them, which was really good. It's a colourful event. It brings a lot of people into Glastonbury. With that said, the road closure is put in place to put in under Town Police Clauses Act, which is suitable and sufficient for a procession, for the throng of a crowd, etc. And it does make it a very, very much safer event for all pedestrians, onlookers, and the participants themselves. So that's a great success story, and hopefully we can build on that and comments regarding Beltane. I'd like to sort of hear, and then when you start the further discussion, we can build on that.
Thank you. So, Councillors, are there any other questions related to that? Councillor
You mean specifically to Beltane?
Yes, so the police report generally.
To Beltane and moving forward with it, just while we're on that subject.
It's not specific to Beltane, so.
Okay, what's your hand there? Councillor Wood.
You mentioned tenants and what was it?
Town Police Clauses Act.
Town Police
Clauses Act. Quite an ancient piece of road legislation for closures, but it derived from the days when we used to drive pit stones for the high streets and so on, and close roads off that. Still applicable today.
So it's still happening then, nobody's charging it.
Well, there are people in charge of it, essentially. And this is where the Town Council, I feel, have embraced it going back a couple of years, put in the road closures to assist that event take place. And it's quite good to actually have an organiser step out of the darkness, if you like, and come into the light and be part of a planned event, if you like. So, yeah, all good.
Who committee or anything the thing or somebody to take off?
No, not as yet. But that's something to be worked on. As I say, the person that stepped forward was quite engaging, came to a town council meeting with the town clerk, etc., and was quite engaging.
And they'll be coming back next year.
Hopefully, we're coming back next year because I'd like to think we would invite them. Yeah. And there's certainly a matter of record for the council because they've communicated with the secretary.
Thank you. Councillor Price.
I just know that later this evening we'll be talking about proposal for a resilience committee, and I wonder whether Beltane's celebrations might fit into some of the discussions in the resilience committee.
That could happen. Yes, very good point. Thank you, Councillor. So, I don't think there's any other questions or comments around that. So perhaps if you have to move on to the next one.
Yeah. So summer solstice, the third one, very much like Beltane. Year one was, again, pandemic. We had challenges around people living and sleeping all the time, and obviously restrictions back. So our inability to move people on. Every year we've learned a bit, and then obviously a multi-agency group was formed to help manage and authorise encampments in and around Glastonbury. That has produced a piece of work, which I'm sure you're all aware of, where they've narrowed part of Stone Down Lane to make it, if someone parks there, it will be an obstruction to the road network. We have this year got more joint patrols with the National Trust. There's a press release gone out that the town clerk, if you haven't got sight of already, yeah, got it. So we went out today from the multi-agency group asking people to park considerately, use it as a time to celebrate the summer solstice by enjoying the outside space and parking in town and walking up to the tour to ease the traffic issue up there. There'll be patrols dedicated to the tour on days leading up. I won't be too specific because it's an open forum, but there'll be dedicated patrols at times throughout the summer solstice period, and enforcement action will be taken against any illegal parking. Again, it's another challenging event, similar to Beltane, that no one owns as such. It just happens, and it's a beautiful thing to witness the summer solstice up on the tour, and obviously we encourage people to come and enjoy it, but it's about being responsible and having a managed response to the solstice. So I'll take any questions about the solstice.
Yeah, so to the number of council, 1, 4, 5, and then council 1.
Thank you. With these proposed road closures, do the buses and like
roads won't be closed.
Okay, right.
Thank you.
I noticed the other day that between Stonedown Lane and Paradise, the beginning of Paradise Lane, sort of collar. I don't know whether you're familiar with that road that goes to the left. As you're going from House Lane, it's the second left.
Okay.
Now there's a couple of gateways there, but moreover there's room for vehicles to park. In fact, cars will park there along that road. I'm a bit concerned that there's no traffic restrictions along that lane, and there is room for people to park. So I'd like to pass that on to others.
I will do. Parking is challenging. Gary probably help before I can. We NSL for the parking contractors for Glastonbury. We don't have any authority of parking. What we do have authority is obstruction, and it's always been a little bit subjective about what constitutes an obstruction. Hence why we've narrowed, or why the multi-agency group narrowed that bit of road. So effectively, when we park on it, it does cause an obstruction. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a difficult one because the keepers of the highway are highways, and then the district council have certain areas of roads they're responsible for. Parking enforcement is done by NSL Parking Services, contracted to highways, and we also have member district council parking enforcement officers. So the whole thing with obstruction has to be proved at the time, and it has to be a genuine obstruction. So much of these type of obstructions become sort of a spontaneous thing. So that elicits police response subject to the obstruction taking place and then proven by a police officer. And that's when action can be taken. But preventive is best. So
would you mind just, because it's obviously before my time, who was it, multi-agency that asked for the barriers that were up on the side of Tour that's now made up, so the stones, all the ones down Brattonwood? Was that multi-agency?
Yes, that's all formed part of there was a number of sites identified that needed work in terms of preventing unauthorised contaminants and causing difficulties. Obviously, Bretton Road and Stonedown Lane were two. And there was a large piece of consultation work gone out, and the proposals were issued, of which the narrowing was the bund. The narrowing, the widening of the bunds was what came out from the Stonedown Lane.
Sorry, so that was for the multi-agency?
Yeah. And then in terms of Glastonbury Festival, the policing team here.
Can I just ask one more question?
Of course, sorry.
There was so I thought it a while ago, and we were discussing the most recent sort of event, not the Jubilee, but an equinox that happened on the tour. The idea that the National Trust themselves do have a responsibility, being it's their piece of land. So I just to double check that they are taking that responsibility seriously.
They've stepped up significantly year on year, every year I've liaised with them. They've just changed rangers. A new ranger, Joel, who I've met, is very keen, wants to make a difference. And once we engage. So we will be working with John in much more than we ever have. And again, I'm sure there'll be learning from this year's solstice, which we will carry to next year's.
Thank you so much. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay.
And to build party.
Yeah, it's only to say that the team is obviously a huge policing operation that sort of fits around Glastonbury. That's more sort of Gary's world that he sits in, partly the reason why last time we had questions about that. But just a bit of reassurance that the policing team that you're all familiar with in terms of the neighbourhood team has been left alone. They're not being swept away to go and police building or anything like that. So it will be, like, clearly it's going to be a busy time for the town and when we're all the media spotlight, but the policing team is unaffected by the Glastonbury Festival. And again, any questions about the fest? Generally, Gary's will be far more.
That's the same question. Okay, well, thank you. Move on to the next item.
So, in terms of antisocial behaviour, I have come and spoken, those of you that before, about how we deal with the antisocial behaviour in the town. I'm happy to come and do it again and give a full input as I did about the different ways we manage antisocial behaviour and in terms of whilst we can and we do arrest people and have started making more arrests. In fact, someone was arrested today, often not in the high street for a drunken disorderly. It's a blunt tool, and sometimes it can be more effective to build up a picture over a little while of someone's behaviour and look for community protection warnings and community protection notices, which again is what we are using, and that then becomes an offence in prison. A breach of that basically becomes an offence in prison by 5 years in prison. When you read the legislation, it looks really, really simple to do, but in fact it's quite difficult, as I've explained before. It's no secret that we had some staffing issues on the team up until recently. I've just now got another PC, so hopefully some of you have met Hannah Grattan. She's now on board and working with us. She's full-time, very keen, and since we've had her on board, the actual number of arrests and the number of enforcement actions has started to increase. We're working a lot more tightly with the church. They're starting to engage with us, which is not something that's been done in the past. We're working with them to try and manage people's behaviour in the team.
And when you mention the church, you mean to job?
Yes, of course.
And who are you liaising with?
The name escapes me.
Yeah. Is it the vicar or?
Yes, yeah, vicar.
David McGill?
Yes. Yeah. But we are working with them. The antisocial behaviour team is working with them. We have a system of warning letters, and we're looking towards a banning letter from the church. And that's what of course, we have to be very careful about banning people from churchyards, etc. This is probably it is an issue. We know we're moving into a busy time. I will do my utmost to make sure that the team will be present in the high street whenever we're on duty. I'm also asking for teams when we're not on duty, if they've got any spare capacity, which again is challenging going into the summer, that they will send officers and PCSOs to the high street to come and patrol, just to give that reassurance to people. I appreciate it's not faces you'll know, but there'll be people. I've asked in the last few weeks, some of you might have seen the horses, asked them to come, and I've actually had more police officers dedicated to patrolling Glastonbury. You've not seen them, but they have been about. And again, they come from what's known as our operational support team, which is band officers that have been moved around to where there is demand. So we are working hard. It is a challenging town to get right, and I think that's the crux of Glastonbury. I think we have to get the policing a bit right. I think it's anywhere I've ever worked, it's more of an art than anywhere, I think, in terms of getting balance between public confidence and enforcement right, and that's what I'm working towards.
Are there any questions about the antisocial behaviour?
Feel free to turn your timer over.
Oh yes, hello, me again. So at the beginning of COVID, the benches were removed because of the problems with COVID and people being prepared together and all the rest of it. Now some of them have been replaced and some of them have been put higher up the high street. Do the police have any objection to the remaining benches being put out on that side of the street by the church?
No, really, it's not really a police matter for us.
Well, it was the police who were asked for them to be removed.
Yeah, that was to do with social distancing and gathering,
Yes,
wasn't it?
yes,
We wanted to
yes.
prevent people to do that. That was, again, legislatively, they couldn't gather, so that was to try and prevent that from happening. But now that obviously is all gone.
And we've got lots of tourists now.
Lots of tourists. I think as I said, when I was asking them to go back, you may want to consider where they go, because there are obviously challenges around lots of people gathering in the high street, and we can't always be there to police it. We do our best. But I just think maybe a conversation about where it's suitable. And of course, I think more seating in the high street would bring a more diverse sort of customer to the.
Okay, so that conversation about where they would go. At the moment, we've got two that are in that area outside St John's Church. Maybe two more there, because having them on the court side, I don't think is a good idea. So I think because we've got some that are now up at Bartown and on the Wells Road, to have another two there, because a lot of people, they like to get something from loaves of bread and go and sit down and have their lunch or whatever. So it'd be quite nice to have two more.
Yeah, I'm open to anything, just we would try it, and if it doesn't work, then give it especially whatever.
Only citing to make sure that it's safe, accessible, wheelchair user friendly for.
That's where they always used to be.
Yeah, yeah.
So basically just putting them back to where they were.
Yeah, a reaction has a reaction, so I'm sure they can cite it sensibly. And also, anything Equality Act wise in safely allowing people to cyclists and stuff like that to safely facilitate, pavement as well.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, back to the church. I live in Bedford District, and I've had it all around town, and I've been doing it for about the last 6 weeks now, I think, where we've really made such a noticeable change to the high street. You really have.
In a good way. I'm assuming it's good.
In a very good way. And I'm hearing two results. Again, it's back to, we're getting there.
Yeah.
I've talked to quite a few police as well, very well. One of them tells me that the church is bringing their own security in.
No,
Are you aware of that?
No, what that was, they did, and that was because the church was having a piece of work done, and they wanted to guard the tools and the site. It wasn't because of any issues they had.
Not even. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Osborne.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Council for the thank you for the work I appreciate what I know that it's from art to broad land is the same as everywhere else.
I totally get that.
And I am a little concerned because a lot of people selling things outside the church. Now, I've been in touch with many different places and none of them are licensed.
Okay, so.
And I understand that you have to do local councils to enforce the rules around illegal sales. I just wonder what you're doing about it.
Yeah.
Great, that illegal market is true.
Fair question, and there is work ongoing with that. We've already picked up with forgotten his title, but a gentleman I speak regular basis called Kurt Staken, who oversees the enforcement side of things, and we're already planning joint patrols with many enforcement officers to deal with unauthorised trading on the high street. So yeah, it's very much on our radar, but we've had other issues to contend with. But yes, of course, I will take it back. Yeah, we're definitely aware of it, and there is a working plan.
Thank you, Councillor.
Yes, I noticed that the high street is much better.
Thank you.
But I'm just wondering whether you have the opportunity of getting a little bit further afield. I'm thinking particularly the similar area and the area which is not improved, which has got worse. And I do understand that how stretched the is, but nevertheless, the majority of the people, the antisocial behaviour that you actually encounter in the country is cited in Kenmore Road. And it was, we live in Kenmore, well, live in Kenmore Road, there's only 5 of us. So we haven't got the voices that they have at Western Road.
and certainly, and I know that you are aware of the problems that I personally have with intruders, trying to poison my dog, all sorts of different problems that have occurred, and we do feel quite abandoned at times.
So, yeah, Canal Wardrobe was one of the other venues that fit with multi-agency as well. So it does fit within the scope of how we can improve it and what we're going to do with it. Unfortunately, it's obviously one of the more challenging areas to do anything with. I know it causes a lot of aggravation to the residents there, and all I can say is we will respond the best we can. And I don't want to overpromise anything because I can't overpromise it. But we will respond to any concerns there. Obviously, we are very much a demand-led organisation, and I absolutely take the point that when you've got 5 people against the competing high street, the voices aren't always going to match up, but the impact actually on your life could be harder than perhaps some of the high streets. So again, it's a balancing act about where we go.
It's very difficult at the moment to be in that area. Personally, if it was down to me, I would never have it. I think it is that bad, and it is not any sort of improvement. But let's hope that the law is changing, and it will change, and hopefully that will give us some sort of assistance and us as well. Because it's quite frightening to have an electrical unit ripped off the wall like a shopping centre, and there's no clue to help.
And absolutely, and I take your point that the law of the land is the same in Glastonbury as anywhere else, and actually that was one thing that I addressed soon after I took over the team. I felt that actually people, certain members of the Glastonbury community have been given too much leeway, and actually needs to move back towards enforcing it, so making a lawful place and an enjoyable place to be. So that is happening. Since I've had on board, the rest has happened. Cinnamon Lane, Canal Wardrobe, all around there is definitely on the radar of things that I want to get the teeth stuck into. But again, it's competing for us, but I will happily
We had our full down there, we had some wild on, we had people parts of it, which is quite frightening. We have music that goes down there, that goes on 5 o'clock in the morning. And it sounds as though you're complaining, but it affects our lives considerably. And in point of fact, my dog is the only defence Cinnamon Lane has.
I think actually it's I think the answer to Cinnamon Lane, as it is with a lot of issues that are presented around Glastonbury, is it's going to have to be a multi-agency push to solve it, and that's what solved Brettley Road, because the work is, I've been down there, but there is work ongoing. So with Brettley Road, we did Riders Mound, we did some work and all that was as a result of all the agencies joining together and agreeing what was going to happen. And I think that's where the Cinnamon Lane and Canal Wardrobe, that's going to be the key to it. Whilst I know the police at the moment play a big part to it, I don't think it would resolve all the issues down there.
No, when I first moved in with 2 caravans, there were lovely people who were on the people. And unfortunately, difficult cases of being moving and those were moved out. They didn't also during the move out by the people that came. And that's caused us a severe problem because these people are not what I call Western people. They come here for one reason only, because they can do their work without having any their sex, because they're put away in the rural community, and it's a problem. For me personally, as a psychotherapist, I understand how dreadful drugs are. I've dealt with drugs, and this is really difficult to get people. You're driving up and down the lane, all out of the caravan, obviously, that's sad. Thank you, but thank you anyway.
Thank you, Councillor March.
With regard to drinking,
could
you clarify the situation again? It is unviable that they could get your big alcohol.
No.
It is.
So what you've got is you've got a public space protection order, which gives us the ability that we think is going to lead to any antisocial behaviour to request that the person hands over the alcohol they have.
We're going to be doing something wrong apart from drinking.
Yeah, because ultimately a complete ban for alcohol in the high street may work against events that would do well. The Foss Fair, for instance, eventually you want to have people drink, and actually what people wanted to enjoy drinking in the high street lawfully and safely and calmly. It's not a bad place to have it. What you don't want is the antisocial behaviour that goes along with it. So it's not an offence to drink. It's, and in actual fact, just to correct me if I think it's wrong, but in actual fact, the offence comes when they don't hand it over, and we have no power of even to seize it. You can't even take it from that person. They commit an offence, which is actually then amended district council issue with a penalty ticket. We supply all the evidence and defend it. But in terms of a complete ban of alcohol in town, I think you've got to be careful of unintended consequences.
Can I add that an extra addition to that is liaising with the alcohol sellers, the supermarket, pubs, etc., where they potentially get their alcohol from, because they've still got a 200 licensing act not to furnish people that are drunk or impaired with alcohol. So, so there is a bit of a limitation on them as well as those that have canned or something like that.
Difficult for them.
Apparently, but they can't just sell confusingly to anybody who staggers in and say, I want another 4-pack type of thing. So, some important messaging to the sellers of alcohol who are licensed to do so. It's probably a good thing.
That's the money.
First of all, thank you very much for a really excellent presentation. It's very informative. It's really great to see that you're on things on the high street. I've got a business just off the high street that's been for a number of years, and pre-COVID times, there was a regular pattern, particularly after the Glastonbury Festival, whereby basically the sun would shine, people would come out, they would sit, they would drink, and almost you could set your clock by that, and later in the afternoon, that's when the clock would start. Now, I just wonder if there's any more that the town council could do to help avoid that situation, and particularly thinking that I know it's difficult to have a complete alcohol ban, I'm not calling for that, but for instance, if there were restrictions on the times that alcohol could be sold for off sales, so for instance you couldn't buy your alcohol say till lunchtime, that would make a considerable difference, I would suggest, to the behaviour in the high street.
That would go and sit back with Mendip District Council in terms of licensing and the sales of alcohol. All I'd say is we've got very efficient licensing officer working with the police, Nicky King, and I liaise on a regular basis to make sure that the licensing activities that go on around the town are lawful and actually come out. 2 or 3 weeks ago now, we visited all the licensed premises in the town to make sure they were aware of their responsibilities under the licence.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson.
Sorry, what's your name?
Simon.
Thanks for coming, Simon. I did ask this item to be put on the agenda with Gerard before you left.
Yeah.
Because obviously that is in my ward on history, and I was aware of the problem was getting there, so I had written quite a speech that I was, dying to sort of give it to everybody. But anyway, you've covered most of the things for me, so thanks very much. I do appreciate the work you're doing. Also, we take a lot of interest in St John's Church. I did, in fact, ask that if this was on the agenda, to invite the vicar and the environment from it and yourselves, etc., etc., so we can get perspective from all the different sides. I do think that, I've sort of had words with people in the church about urinating against the church, got a load of abuse back, but it's not the worst crime in the world, but it's not good, things like that.
Very public
and there's lots of sort of what I call sort of minor misdemeanors that just get on your nerves and have to be dealt with in some way. The vicar really needs to sort of say who's allowed in there, whatever. But there is a more serious aspect to some of that as well, obviously. And quite often you can walk past St John's Church and the air is heavy with the smell of weed, which seems to be sort of left alone. I'm not saying that's the truth, but that's the perception. And I think with that allowance of that kind of encourages other, maybe more serious drugs to be, well, that's not touching the weed, that's whatever. And there is drug dealing going on, which is really upsetting to me, is the lane to St John's Church. I've seen it, and I've got witnesses to tell me that that's true. And I think, people, either children walking to school or parents taking their kids to school, don't need that. On the road going into the school, we don't need it anyway, but that in particular is quite boring. So, just respectfully ask you to sort of keep an eye on that. I'm sure you are anyway.
I am, and you're right, I don't want drugs anywhere near a school, certainly not in the high street. I have spoken with the chair of governors at the school, and we've given him assurances that we will do our best to prevent it. Obviously, the problem is that when we turn up in uniform, all the drugs tend to spin. And whilst stop search is a tactical option we can use, and I've never, despite the fact it's a very controversial power to be used, I think it's a very effective one, and one I wouldn't like to see the police use ultimately. But it has to be balanced and used appropriately. So if you walk into it here, and it's not cannabis, then I wouldn't be able to search you all. So as in when you walk into a public space and you smell cannabis, doesn't mean to say that you can necessarily search the person.
No, of course not.
And I get that. And there is, clear indications that one drug can lead to another drug, and you get into a system where it's building up. All I can say is if you see anything, it's reported it via crime stoppers with 101, just so we can build up an intelligence picture of times, locations, people that we need to keep an eye on, and that helps us. So I suppose my plea would be is that ultimately the police, and more now than it ever has been, and it will be more again, and scary about it, is that it's a numbers-driven game. Our resources go where demand it is, and I know it's a pain, and I know people get fed up with having to ring 101, but ultimately it's the numbers that drive the direction. Of course, I have a certain amount of resources at my disposal, my leisure, but the bulk gets eroded with this is the issue that our computer system spits out and tells us.
I mean, I have noticed some days that it isn't as bad there. I mean, I did have a move from it. For me today, that it's pretty bad there. I didn't get a chance to go there myself. So, so we'll keep an eye on it. If I do feel it needs to come back to the council, I will try and get on the agenda for the next time. I will get a bit of them there.
The team were made the rest of them, so you'll say that it probably is far away from them. There is some who joined an evening at which was agreed.
Thank you. Any other questions for
Well, Gary's happy to take any questions about any organised events.
Your Worship, I have been in discussion with the Vicar. If I may just read out something from an email he sent me today. David McGilchrist would like to feed into the meeting that they're working closely with the police, and that from their point of view, and supported by the PCC of the church, they now have a zero tolerance policy over drinking, drug taking, drug dealing and dogs loose in the churchyard. It's sometimes very difficult to move some people on, and for very good reasons, so the police cannot always be around. During the month of July, the church have agreed that the gates will be open between 10 in the morning and 6 at night, Tuesday to Friday. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Simon, thank you very much indeed for coming too. It's always a pleasure to see you here, and I'll just echo the councillors here who said what a great job you're doing, and I know that you and the team do understand Glastonbury very well, and I think we're all there for it.
Thank you everyone for your support. I look forward to working with the town council as closely as we did last year.
Mr. Mayor, may I say one more thing? I just say that we do like to work with event organisers and towns and councils throughout Avon and Somerset Constabulary. I would encourage and foster the engagement opportunity. We don't like to be seen or known as a party police, which is why our tactful approach is one of engagement and fostering properly planned events. And Glastonbury is full of colourful, vibrant events that must bring in good, I'd like to think, good money to the local economy and so on. So I would just encourage you, if at any opportunity you have with some of these events that don't come through a normal channel, to try to foster some engagement.
Do we have your contact details, Connor?
I'll make sure Connor has my contact.
Thank you very much.
As Gerald did, so if there is an address book, I'll be on there. Gary Beck.
Brilliant, thank you.
Before you leave, Simon, people may have noticed that we failed to light the unity candle at the beginning of the meeting. This was because we didn't have a lighter. But I think when it miraculously appeared, and so I would like to ask you if you would be happy to light the candle and then perhaps if everyone in the room would join me in standing to observe silence and smiling. Thank you. It won't have escaped many people's attention that this is the anniversary of Granville, so we will just bear that in mind. Thank you very much. As we move on to see the county report. Do we have a report from either of the county councils?
Thank you, Your Worship. I've received a handover report from our previous county councillor, Liz Lation, which has been tabled for members and also sent round on email. I've not received a written report from County Councillor Cottle, and of course he's given his apologies for this evening. I've spoken to County Councillor Hart, who's not been able to make it yet, on the phone today. She's not provided me anything in writing yet, but is intending to send around to all members a report based on an extraordinary meeting of Somerset County Council that is happening tomorrow.
Thank you, Connie. Councillor Larson, of course, was a truly remarkable county council for us, and she has worked very hard over the years with Councillor Nappo, who's now sat amongst us, I'm glad to say. And we sent this report, which I will ask councillors to note. But if there's anything that anyone would wish to raise that is in Councillor Larson's report, this would be the time to do so.
At the bottom of the first page, the town's fund, he talks about the project as the enabling project, which I know speaks very much to what Margaret Oakland was talking about, the issue of roadside tablets and that a suitable tablet site should be provided. Do we have any update on that at all, or is that still just something that's in progress and nobody actually knows where our time is?
My understanding is that that is still in progress, and part of the issue is around finding suitable land. That's as much as I can tell you. I don't know, Connie, whether you can add anything to this.
I'm afraid, Your Worship, I don't have any detail to add to that. That's also my understanding.
I'll just look at Councillor Manning just to see if you have anything else you was on Councillor Ward as well.
I sit on Councillor Ward as well, but unfortunately,
Councillor Hughes, Councillor.
unfortunately, I've got nothing to ask about. I don't know more.
Thank you very much. So, anything else from Councillor Larson's report? Just, Connie, would you convey our thanks to Councillor Larson for passing this on to us?
Absolutely, I will, Your Worship.
Now move to receive district council reports. Councillor Henderson.
Thanks, nothing to report, to be perfectly honest. There was a full council meeting 2 weeks ago, I don't know before the last council meeting or not, but only to report that I'm back on the planning board and we'll have a meeting tomorrow evening.
Thank you very much. Councillor McDougall.
I don't know whether Connor has my report, doesn't anything bring in the report. I sent one of these. But
but similar to speaking for the council and planning board to my mind.
Thank you. And I am afraid I have nothing to report either. I was unable to attend the meeting doing that due to work meetings. So we move forward. If there, unless there's any questions, thank you very much. We now move to
this is a request to the county councillor. It could be noted by the clerk for various complaints about the Torview Avenue situation near the green, and that there are still only 3 caravans there. It's right on the corner, it's obstructing the view, and it's also causing a nuisance. Although I don't think they're occupied caravans, but it's causing a nuisance and a distress to local residents who feel they can't use the seats there, particularly the elderly ones, so they use it as a place of congregation where they meet their friends and neighbours. So if we could have a request for double yellow lines on that junction, that would alleviate the problem.
Thank you, Councillor. So we now move to note the resolutions of the meetings of the various delegated committees. Now, Councillors, I think that it's quite important that we actually go through these resolutions, because in effect, during this meeting, we are approving the resolutions of committees, and I wonder whether I could ask Councillor Smiley to very briefly take through the resolutions from policy and assets.
Yes, briefly, it was resolved that I was the chair and my colleague, Councillor Lockland, was deputy. There was a discussion of a mural painted in the back wall of the town hall. This opportunity to go to ask the artists to submit their designs. The other thing that was resolved was that the Fisher's Hill Voluntary Garden Group now report to this committee as property assets in respect of their activity on Fisher's Hill recreation ground. A memorandum of understanding is drafted and brought to the next meeting to establish the group's remit on the site.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'm very glad to ask you to stand again and go through that.
Of course. Again, it was resolved that I was the chair of planning and my colleague Councillor Lockland was deputy chair. And then we had members of the public came to speak against the application of multi-mix, and in fact the agent spoke in favour, and we all listened, but because we own land very close to it, we were unable to give any recommendation. And then we discussed conversion of a garage. Well, actually we didn't, because again my colleague Councillor Lockland was his application, so we didn't discuss that one. And then there was an erection of a double garage, one with Beckery.
Well, if you just perhaps just say what they were and whether we recommended approval.
That was approval. We recommended approval for that. We recommended approval of a conversion of agricultural buildings to residential dwelling houses with listed building consent. I haven't got address for that. I was on behalf of Mr. Martin Harrison. I also recommended approval for the actual demolishing of the existing buildings in order to provide the dwelling houses at the same address. We also discussed and we refused an application by 7 to 2 against of a mass on Park Farm Road Verge. We considered, the committee considered that the mass was too large and had an adverse visual impact from Muriel Hill and was all both protected sites.
Thank you very much. I think that you might need to speak to the extraordinary assets meeting and well.
Again, that was on the 6th of June, and it was noted that the clerk exercise emergency powers to authorise expenditure on the hot water cylinder, which came to when the hot water, the main boiler was condemned, there was no hot water in the building. So, that amounted to £1,844 approximately. It was also resolved to fully repipe the town hall after great discussion, including under the main hall for a new gas-fired and possible hydrogen-ready boiler, which enables the town hall to be zoned with new insulated pipes. That would increase greater efficiency. At the moment, the efficiency was 4%, this will instigate an efficiency of about 97%, so that's improvement at some expense now, as you understand. It was also resolved to engage the services of the heating system consultant to spec the most efficient system for the town hall rate quotations to be sought for these works. And it was also resolved to seek a public works loan board loan to cover the full cost of the project. Do you need to go into any figures about that?
Not at the moment, no. Thank you very much. And there was also a staffing committee meeting held, and this has come, the council had previously, many years ago, when I was quite a young man, resolved to be a living wage employer. But we had perhaps, unfortunately, failed to implement that motion. And it was resolved in the staff committee that this should be the case. And so I'm very pleased to tell you that we are now a living wage employer. It's only taken 10 years for us to act on the motion, but I'm sure that we will continue to do so moving forward. And we consider pay scales and responsibility of the staff, that's under review, and a new line management structure was noted, and this is as a result of Gerard leaving the council as our former clerk, and we also had plans for appraisals of staff, which we noted at the time. Councillors, these are the resolutions of the various committees. I've asked us to note these, and I will pass. I have with you. So we now move on to consider the date of the next planning committee meeting. Conor, could you speak to this briefly?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, it was pointed out to the clerk's office that the third Tuesday of this month, next Tuesday the 21st, actually falls on the summer solstice. So it was requested that the date of the next planning committee be considered at this meeting in light of the fact that it may not be very well attended because of the summer solstice. There is a recommendation to move it back 1 week to the 28th rather than the 21st. But that's for members to consider and decide.
Thank you. Members of the planning committee, are you happy to move the date of the meeting to the 28th? Do I have to show of hands who would be happy? Thank you. So that's
I would accept my apologies for this.
that looks like it would be quorum meeting. So I'm going to suggest that is the day of the meeting, the 28th of June. And we thank you very much, Conor, for raising that to our attention. You're, of course, always interested to make sure that even without the training, you're conscious of the equality of that, which is based on religion. So we now move to receive motions from council. And speaking of equality and training, I know the first one is proposed by Councillor Urbanesco, so Councillor, you'd like to speak to it.
Thank you. So, shall I just read out this, or shall I explain it a bit more? Is that how we do this?
You can read it out if you wish, and speak to it if you wish, remembering that you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. So, this came about because our very first meeting, our last meeting, the public set up and consolidating, said about whether we do apologies training, so I was thinking about that. And then since then also, Councillor Suzanne Hart also said about us making sure as councillors we are actually representing all of our town in all of its colours and ages and cultural backgrounds. So the actual motion is that the council will organise policies training for all councillors. The training shall cover the town's demographics. So that's something that I can help research, whichever training provided is find, including cultural competence, age awareness, mental health, transgender, LGBT+, different types of travellers, including ethnicity, non-bricks and mortar dwellers, and protected characteristics in our equalities legislation, and also taking Liz Sunderville that came in earlier, her recommendations as well, that we find provider. And in that case, we have a very good provider in Glastonbury, which is the Glastonbury Trust, which actually would pay for the training itself, and they are looking for a good trainer. So I'm very up for recommendations from our council for the variety or any recommendations for the quality trainers.
Thank you. I see a couple of councillors speaking, but first of all, I'd like to ask if any councillors wish to speak against the motion. So, Councillor Napa.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I understand what we're trying to do. I've got my own thoughts about things, this thing. I really don't want to be reprogrammed, and I believe that my thoughts are my own, and I don't really wish to take part. And I really don't know what the purpose is, because I've thought about this on a lot of occasions, and I really don't want to take part in it. Thank you.
Thank you. So, just in answer to your question, the purpose is that in law there are protected characteristics, and we, in our role as councillors, have to understand what those are and make sure that we don't prejudice ourselves against anybody who may have one of those or discriminate against them in any way. Councillor Napa, would you be able to tell me what those protected characteristics are?
Sorry, say that again.
Would you be able to tell me what those protected characteristics are?
Yeah, well, yes, what the lady said earlier, but I just don't want to take part in the
So, Councillor, I want you to
discussion.
demonstrate your understanding of the protected characteristics by telling this council all of them. If you can, I would suggest you go for it.
I don't want to take part.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the 2010 Act very well. I've done diversity training, I've done it at work, we all do it at work, so I'm not quite sure why you feel that public money should be spent on retraining us and stuff that we all do in our workplaces anyway. I've been advisory to... Oh, sorry. I've been an advisory teacher for Gypsy Roma and travelling children, so I'm quite aware of sorts of them. But most of all, I think what we really want to talk about is how we serve the community, and that will not be done just by trying to sort of, as Terry put it rather nicely, reprogram us. It's about, I mean, I think we're all aware of the demographic. I'm a care worker. I go out as a domiciliary care worker to a vast number of people, and I see a very wide range. I understand how diverse this demographic is, but this is not actually addressing that. What would address it would be actually looking and targeting our services, not wasting money on what Terry calls reprogramming. That's all. So I'm against it. I think it's a waste of money.
Thank you. So I noticed that Councillor Smart, you wish to speak, and Councillor Henderson, you wish to speak, and then...
Oh, I just wanted to answer.
Right to the
fine. Thank you. Thank you. As far as the payment goes, this is funded through the Glastonbury Trust, so it's money that we raise. It's not public funding.
To suggest that the small amendment to include the word disabilities is the mental ability people in the vote against quality training. I was going to question the cost because obviously this council has got some quite expensive times coming up, and we are coming into some rather difficult monetary times, so you want to be very careful when so I would be very interested in seeing how we're going to fund this and we're here that it's free. We amended have had equality training. There's an officer who works for Somerset County Council called Tom Rutland, who's an excellent equality officer. I will certainly contact him to see what his thoughts were before we made any decisions.
Thank you very much.
The Twitter isn't for or against, it's just something that I think I need to say to you. But you're all sitting around the table and you don't really know much of the table. So I don't like the feeling that maybe people assume that I may not be okay with equality. So I'd just like to tell you my background, which might be useful for you in looking for help. I'm actually a fully registered psychotherapist with a degree in clinical psychology. I specialise in post-traumatic stress, and I'm a past trustee of the charity, mental health charity Mind. As a volunteer with Unity, I have worked with people in Rajasthan, in Nepal, in the Middle East, in China. I've worked with local people of all religions, Hinduism, Jain, Buddhist, Muslim, Christianity, with everyone. In Nepal, I've spent some time in laboratories and hospice for the dying. I spent 7 days there with dying people and the people who were excluded because of their illnesses. I also worked with people who contracted leprosy and helped to try to put them into a community that they could actually manage themselves, so they could actually produce things to sell themselves. Because leprosy is a very visible illness, and people are very aware and very frightened of it, particularly in Nepal. I've worked with the police in Shropshire, explaining and giving insight into what hedonism is and witchcraft is, and the difference between the two. I'm a painter myself, so I'm quite well versed in that. In Leicester, Ivan Colley trained all the frontline staff in the Leicester County Council and in Rutland Council in the Mental Capacity Act, and how to deal with difficult people. And this was about people who are hoarding, people who are housing advisors had to go out and deal with people that they didn't quite understand how to deal with. So that took 3 years. I was also indirectly involved in the aftermath of the Fiona Pilkington case, which I'm not sure whether anybody here remembers now, but a lady who repeatedly asked for help for a disabled daughter from a group of youths who were targeting her house. Eventually lost the plot completely because the police didn't turn up. The police got fed up with so many calls on them. And they didn't turn up, and she just took herself and her daughter out to a lay-by in the car, and they burnt themselves to death. His role in the police at that case, and I'm actually involved in, because of my post-traumatic stress training, with the officer that had to deal with that because he came away from it with post-traumatic stress. So I've also been a volunteer with the Citizens Advice Bureau. I've worked with Irish travellers, Roman gypsies, and part of me is a Roman gypsy, my great-grandmother was a Roman, and for people with disabilities. I was their advocate in the court of law. So if they were a problem and they had to go to court, I would represent them in court, I would represent them at tribunals. And I'm pleased to say I never lost a case. I've also been involved with child protection, and I've run courses in cultural diversity. And in Warwickshire, I was also instrumental in setting up a carers commune because I was a carer myself and we eradicated the blacklisting. Here in Glastonbury, they take a gentleman called Mike, who's very well known in town. He needed access to the DWP payments that he deserved, and no one could help him. But fortunately, I had a chat with him, and we were able to intervene and move more than £10,000 in that that actually changes their considerably. I'm currently working with two Chinese teenagers who have been adopted from China and are now living in this country, and they are now self-harming because they've lost their identity. They have no identity, they don't know where or who they are. So I think I've got a very great insight into helping people, and that is what I'd like to sort of present.
Thank you very much.
I'm a little bit foggy about what's been proposed, a lot. But is it that if we were to support that we'll all be having to go along with some of this training? As that, yes.
The motion is that this council will organise a solid training for national councillors. The word is organise.
Yeah.
The training shall cover, and then there's a number of things that it will cover.
I'm not very comfortable with it for some of the reasons already expressed. Generally speaking, I think you can have a counterproductive influence on the outcome you want to achieve by over-organising people. It almost seems to presume that everybody's got terrible prejudices which have to be ironed out. And I sort of, I don't know, because my time's so stretched, I can't do everything I want to do, and the plate falling off stick. My gut reaction is, oh God, help, I don't need to be told to not be prejudiced against people.
I'll respond by name. Now, this isn't about us as individuals, this is about us as councillors, making sure that we're aware of the issues, including unconscious bias and other things that we might have and be unaware of, that we need to operate as councillors within the law and the Equalities Act, as we mentioned earlier on, and that we are providing this to enable us as councillors to be more aware of these things and moving forward in our roles. 5 years to achieve this. Many District Council has this as something that councils have to do. And there may be many people who already feel that they understand all completely, but they do need to do the training so that they are understanding. So it's not about you personally having been controlled by the council, it's about the council making the opportunity to be aware of these things to us as councillors. Whether or not you wish to go on training is another matter. But if you are not aware of the Qualities Act or protect characteristics, there may be merit in it. And Henderson, you've already spoken to you.
I did, right. Well, I just had to say that I think there can't be harm done in learning equality legislation. I'm aware of what Louise said about some go for a cheap option, and the fact that we're giving this as a free version kind of rings alarm bells. And I would certainly say, would it be possible to bring this back with some more information as to who's going to be the provider? And I would certainly re-recommend Tom Rutland because he is an excellent mind on this matter. And then I would be more happy to vote on it with more information.
Thank you. As Councillor Manchester to reply to that, as I don't think it's free training.
Thank you. Yes, no, it's not coming out of the purse of the council. It's not free. It is being paid for, and they do go for the highest trainers. And the reason why we thought going through there is because we can tailor it to what people, also what people need beyond what is actually expected of us, which is to learn the protected characteristics and also to do the actual quality training. And this is by no means because, because of what you said earlier about people assuming that people aren't on this. Frankly, it's basically because we have such a diverse. I mean age, I mean mental health as well. All these things. I mean the plethora of mental health. I'm not saying we should all go out there and diagnose, but people that we're dealing with, the traumas, the stresses, those kind of things, it helps. I mean, this is not going to make us an expert, but at least it will give us the beginning. And as
as his worship. So it's unconscious bias. So yes, and they will find the best ones for us. So yeah, thank you.
So I'm really interested just to have heard everyone speaking on this. I've not had equalities training myself. I'm quite up for it. I think I personally enjoy it much more if we did it at least as some of us doing it together, rather than a kind of one get through programmed exercise. Because I was very taken by what Councillor Oakham said. We don't know each other very well, and it might be an opportunity not just to get reprogrammed, which obviously doesn't sound very nice, but to get to know each other better and just explore where we're all coming from. And I personally I'd like to encourage Councillor Napper to engage with it on that spirit rather than being reprogrammed.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else wish to speak to this? Right through time? You spoke quite a long time.
Just one word.
I understand.
Sorry. One word I found in the training of diversity that I've done is one word only, and that word is respect. And if you have respect, then you have that you're halfway to any sort of training. But it has to come from the other side as well. Because respect on one side is just one side. It really to have respect on both sides. That's what I've found. So it might be useful to think when we're training.
Thank you very much. Councillors,
I think I agree with the other councillors that have spoken about how many of us on the council have already had training. But I think that whenever we start a new job role, being councillors, it is important for us to have a look at what skills we have and retrain. And I think things in legislation change very often and have impact on our work in many ways. And I think it would be important for any training we do to speak to our roles as councillors and how it impacts on how we engage with the community and inform us about our duties and our powers as councillors rather than as kind of individuals to tailor it to the roles that we're doing, and that may alleviate some of those worries and concerns about reprogramming and actually purposes to help us better do our new roles. That makes sense.
thank you. Well, councillors, we should all be mindful that in this chamber we're speaking as councillors, not as individuals. So, I move to vote. All those in favour?
There's no chance of bringing this back before the commissioner.
And so moving to vote.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have 9 in favour. Thank you, Your Worship. I have 3 against. Thank you, Your Worship. I have 1 abstention. 2. I do. Sorry. Can those who are abstaining raise their hands again, please? 1, 2, and 3. Sorry, I couldn't see. Beg your pardon.
So we now move to item B, which is proposed by Councillor White.
Yes, thank you. We had some discussions about starting a resilience committee, and so the motion is this council will form a delegated resilience committee to strategically govern Glastonbury Town Council in building resilience and becoming carbon neutral by 2030, in line with our climate and ecological emergency declaration. Should I ask the town clerk about the background points?
Oh, you can.
Okay.
Yes. Councillor Smart, secondly, you will speak this. Councillor White.
Thank you.
The background to this is in order to work hand in hand with our resilience, emergency resilience officer, Nurse Taylor, and she suggested the wording with our approval, in that we can be concentrating on reducing, decarbonising, supporting nature, influencing and adapting the 5 principles that is working within the job description. And this motion is in order to have a full councillor committee so we can govern and drive forward on a timescale all aspects of Lisa's work. So just to be clear, reducing is prioritising the reduction of demand for energy and resources. Decarbonising is reducing Western Town Council's carbon footprint to carbon neutral by 2030. Supporting nature is exploring processes of biodiversity enhancement and habitat protection. Influencing is sharing best practice and support for Glastonbury Town residents, businesses and visitors, connecting with supporting and lobbying higher levels of government. And adapting is building the resilience of Glastonbury's physical infrastructure and community against present and future impacts of climate, ecological and economic crises, including reviewing Glastonbury's emergency response plan and updating as appropriate.
Anybody wish to speak against the motion?
Yeah, I'm just a bit concerned about this term strategically governed, because I'm not sure that a committee like this can strategically govern an elected body. And if that is what it means, then I could not vote for it.
And so would you clarify what you think the body is? Because it would be made up of councillors who are elected.
It would not be involve anybody who is not an elected official. Is that what you're saying?
And so please do stand when you're speaking. This is a committee of the council.
I'm terribly sorry, but I do have mobility issues. I didn't really want to bring it up, but as you're talking about equalities, I've had to do hip replacements.
Councillor, please remain seated for the rest of the meeting and any further meetings. I do apologise.
I'm sure you the scarves.
You don't need to, I totally accept what you said. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, are you comfortable that it's only for council?
Okay, if that is clear, yeah.
Councillor?
Yes, I just like to have to as well about the word delegate. The influence to me is that this committee will be able to take major decisions without having to come to the full council. And some of the decisions are about becoming carbon neutral by 2030. So it could be some quite major things relating to heating and lighting of council buildings. And there's huge budgetary implications for all of this. But this will all be decided by committee without reference to the town council. That's all clarification.
So, Councillor White, could you clarify delegated in your motion?
Yes, thank you. So, yes, indeed, the idea is to make decisions, so like some of the other committees do, and then anything that needs to come to full council, comes to full council.
Councillor, are you happy to remove the word delegated from the motion?
Yeah, we're happy.
Thank you. Councillor Mann, are you happy with that?
I'm still nervous about it because of the budgetary implications that we're budget and suddenly somebody else has said, well, it's all going to be spending on money.
Councillor, there's not a delegated committee, they wouldn't have the power to do it. So, Councillor?
Yeah, I just have a question then, because surely normally, I'm not too sure on this, but I think when we've done property and assets, that any major financial things actually do have to come before the Finance and General Purposes Committee, and so through the Town Council that way. That, even in property and assets, let's say buying Herbert's Field, it was something that then did actually have to go through the Finance and General Purposes and through the Town Council. So in terms of the money spending, I wouldn't have thought that this committee would be any different from any other. It's like we're already talking about renewing the old heating system because it's broken down. We've been talking about that previously with the Climate Emergency Resilience Officer in order to decarbonise the town hall, and we've had a consultant looking, but no major money is being spent until we're all agreed on it. Am I not correct on that, or?
Well, I would seek clarification from the clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. In terms of this actual committee, what could be done if it were to be set up as a delegated committee? Then the terms of reference could be quite specific as to exactly what the committee on their own could make a decision on, and what would have to come through other committees based on the terms of reference that those committees have. And in terms of being able to spend a budget, if it were a delegated committee, then at budget setting time, finance and general purposes, like it does for youth provision, is the example that comes to my mind, could actually set a specific budgetary figure for that committee to then spend. But anything over and above, that committee could make recommendations to full council or property and assets based on their work in the areas that they're looking at. So I wouldn't consider that even if this were to be set up as a delegated committee, granted you don't have a set of terms of reference in front of you now to scrutinise, however I'm hoping to bring to the next full town council meeting terms of reference for every single committee and advisory committee that we have, and work with the chairs of each of the committees in drafting those and bringing them here. So I know it's been discussed between the proposer and seconder that you may wish to remove the word delegated committee. I would say that's fine. If your wish that this is to actually be an advisory committee, that is fine. However, if it were to be a delegated committee, we could be very specific on the terms of reference, what they're allowed to look at, what they're allowed to decide a spend on without coming to another committee, and what, by virtue of other committees' terms of reference, would have to be a recommendation from the Resilience Committee to another committee of the council. I'm sorry for saying the word committee so many times.
Could you just clarify what the term delegated means in regard to?
Yes, Your Worship. In terms of a delegated committee, that is a committee that can make a decision on its own. So, for example, property and assets, finance and general purposes, and currently youth provision. I'm just rattling these off the top of my head, so I may have missed one. In terms of an advisory committee, they cannot make a decision on their own. They have to make a recommendation to full council. So you will see later on tonight's agenda, you will consider recommendations or verbal updates from advisory committees. So those advisory committees, Glastonbury and Bloom as an example, can meet, discuss, debate a topic, but then they have to make a recommendation to full council for full council to agree what they can do. So that invariably does slow down the decision-making process, because they have to make a recommendation, then it has to be considered. So that is the main difference between a delegated and an advisory committee.
Thank you. Councillor One, did you intend to be an advisory committee or delegated committee?
No, Your Worship, we preferred it to be a delegated committee, and so in which case we'd like to reinstate delegated, and then terms of reference.
Thank you. And Councillor
Just a point of question for that. Am I right that the delegated committee only consists of town council members and not outside members of the public?
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, Councillor One, Councillor Smart.
Just for point of clarity, sorry, the list of duties or aims of this committee seem to be exactly what the person is already doing, and as far as I'm aware, seems to be doing a really good job. So can you just clarify what the point of it is?
I can take that. We have a very good clerk, but if we didn't meet here regularly as a full council, we wouldn't have any clue what he was doing. We also have very good officers who deal with various things like in Bloom, but if the Bloom committee didn't meet, we wouldn't know anything about it. We have a governance role within what the council does. So the imperative of something as urgent as climate emergency, carbon reduction, all that sort of thing, could lead councils to think perhaps we should have a committee on that, so that councils are completely up to date and aware of what's happening, and if a decision around governance is required, can make it. I think that's the same for every one of the committees that we have.
Your Worship, may I just come back on Councillor Lokabandu's question?
Yes.
A delegated committee, certainly the only voting members could be elected councillors. You could have guests, you could invite people who had expertise or an interest in the subject, but votes could only come from elected members in a delegated committee. In an advisory committee, votes can come from members of an advisory committee who are not elected town council members.
There are two exceptions to that rule. One being any committee related to tourism, a specific piece of legislation that means that non-council members can vote on that, which is what happened when we had the Domestic Investment Committee. And there's another one that I think is something to do with harbours. We don't have any here at the moment.
Yeah.
These are in the 1974 Act. So, councillors, is there anyone else wish to speak to this? Councillor Smythe or Councillor White, maybe? We have to move to vote. So we move to vote. All those in favour?
I have 11 in favour. Councillor Lockabando, I couldn't make a determination. No, that's fine. So I have 11 in favour.
Those against? Abstentions?
I have 3 abstentions.
All councillors voted. Thank you. So we now move to the final item in this section, which is this council resolves to set up a committee to approve World Heritage Site status for Glastonbury. Councillor Serena.
So this is a topic that has come up before. People might be aware that at the Olympics ceremony, Glastonbury Tour was central stage. Glastonbury Tour is also used for Somerset County Council brochures, and it's considered iconic for a large proportion of Britain's population. There was a move for a World Heritage Site for Glastonbury, which included the Somerset Levels and Moors. And it was actually thrown out because it was too wide a remit. So we have been advised, and you will see in the papers that you've been given by the Deputy Lieutenant of Somerset, to go for a World Heritage Site, but to limit it. To limit it to Glastonbury Tor and Glastonbury Abbey. Because of course Glastonbury Abbey holds pride of place in Britain as being considered the earliest abbey in Britain, the earliest place of Christendom in terms of an abbey. We have 2 very special areas of heritage within this little market town. And I think that it's time that we actually went onto the world stage and said, hey, look at us. This is a special place, a very, very special place. Not only in terms of the landscape feature of Glastonbury Tor and all of the cultural and spiritual aspects connected with that, but also in terms of the Abbey. And we get our major economy is from tourism. Now, you know, that started with the Abbey and the pilgrims coming to the Abbey back in 10th century, 11th century, whenever that pilgrim aspect started, bringing the money and creating the town of Glastonbury. Glastonbury would not be a town without the Abbey and the pilgrims that came to the Abbey. And since the demise of moorlands and the sad demise of the tanneries and the loss of income in that way, we are now reliant in Glastonbury on this tourist industry. Sad to say, but we have to face the fact of it. And one of the things that a World Heritage Site status would do would be to increase that. It would bring in people who have got maybe more money, it would bring in more tourists, it would help to actually boost the economy of Glastonbury. It would be something of great benefit to the town. So, you know, John has prepared this paper. I do recommend you know, that we look at it and see what great benefit it would go for us to form a committee to try to see whether it would be possible for us to apply for World Heritage Site
Thank you, Your Worship. Fantastic. I think it's a great idea. But I just wish that we could encapsulate rural Hill as well, because I think rural has a great romantic thing to Glastonbury, and I'm not sure that would widen it too greatly. And I just think it would be a great encapsulation for the whole town.
So what I'd like to come back and say, well, this is obviously something that the committee could discuss and could look at. I was mentioning the recommendations from the Deputy Lieutenant of Somerset.
I'm sorry, I've not had a chance to read your...
I was just mentioning his recommendations, but I'm sure the committee could discuss Janice or Will and see whether it would be advisable to broaden the remit or whether to go with what would be recommended by somebody who was instrumental in getting Bath as a World Heritage Site status and so knows what he's talking about. Thank you.
I think it's a great idea, but how does the Chancellor fit in? Because the Chancellor is at the foot of the talk, and it's in context in that area, it was completely.
I mean, I'm open for the whole of the Isle of Avalon to be included, personally. However, we've got to be practical and see what the World Heritage UNESCO would accept.
I'm just thinking it's already a World Peace Star, so that might help. It's at the foot of the talk, it's not serious over there.
It could be part of the talk. It should be part of the talk.
I just remind councillors, we're just resolving this at the committee, we're not actually discussing the World Heritage Site.
Good point, Councillor. Councillor Watt.
Thank you. I've reviewed 3 World Heritage applications in the past. One was in Sudan, another one was Lake Chad, that was recent, and then the real jewel in the crown was in Colombia.
Now, did you mean in a professional capacity?
Yeah, but for as the peer reviewer, the external reviewer for these applications. So I sort of understand pretty well what's happening. And one of the things that does happen is they ask for then the surrounding landscape. So we've already just been notified that some 60,000 hectares of the Somerset levels and moors are going to be part of the nature recovery programme. And so that sort of blends in really nicely with what's here already. And they do ask about local government and sort of other bodies in local areas.
Thank you very much. Councillor Smart.
I'm glad to see there's lots of enthusiasm for this motion. It's long overdue. So, bearing in mind we've got lots to discuss at a committee, I'd like to suggest we move to the vote.
Okay. Thank you. All those in favour?
I have that as unanimous, Your Worship.
Thank you. Just to make sure everyone against. Thank you very much, councillors. We now move to receive the income expenditure tax and balance sheet. This is in your papers. Councillors, the role that we have to do here is to look through as the governing body to see that we're comfortable with these, and Conrad, is this for us to note or to approve?
I would believe, Your Worship, because it says to receive, you are to note it, but you have got a copy here to sign yourself. So whether you wish to take that as a vote or as an aye will suffice. I shall leave to you, Your Worship.
So, councillors, are there any items that you wish to raise within this, noting that it is actually the balance sheet and expenditure for the year? Only if there's something that you have a question about, Councillor.
The first question I've got is why is the Deputy Town Council not going to finance the joint purchase committee first of all, because I would have thought that we would want to go scrutinise it first in great detail. I've got a number of observations on several things, and I've got quite a few. I don't really want to take up too much time, but for instance, we've got investments of £41,000, we've got cash in hand of £49,000, and we've got interest on investments of £133, which sounds pretty diabolical, even where interest rates are. So, but there's lots of things like that. And I'm happy to take it offline with something, because I've got quite a few things to think about.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the clerk, is this time sensitive that we sign it this evening?
I have not had advice from the responsible finance officer as to whether it is time sensitive to sign it off this evening. No, Your Worship. Do you wish for me to try and seek that guidance very swiftly? In terms to answer Councillor Manning's query as to why it comes straight to full council rather than finance and general purposes, finance and general purposes in years gone by has only met twice in a year, once in July to discuss grant applications and once in November to set the budget, is my understanding. I do consider this to be a full council matter, but granted, if you wish to scrutinise it, it might be best to defer it to another meeting, but I can seek the guidance of the responsible finance officer if you wish, Your Worship.
Thank you. I think this is a very good question, Mr. Manning. We, of course, are right at the end of the process where this has been audited and has gone through a whole process. But I am certainly very happy to encourage councillors' scrutiny of what we're doing financially and applaud the fact that you have a number of items that you wish to raise. Do you feel that any of these items would prevent us from signing these tonight?
My feeling is that the queries I've got are queries, but this is obviously going through an audit, so it should be solved. But it's more going forward for 22-23. But it would be nice to be able to get some answers, but I'm happy to take it from you perhaps.
Thank you. I think that this is worthy of taking to finance and general purposes. Could you could advise me when the next meeting of finance and general purposes is?
I can certainly try to, Your Worship. Let me just go through my calendar and see if I have it.
If any councillors have it to hand, please let me know.
I don't have it in my calendar that I have access to, Your Worship, but I believe it is next month, July.
So, I would suggest, councillors, that
26th of July.
Thank you very much. 26th of July. So, councillors, on the 26th of July, I would suggest that we have an item for a review of the income and expenditure of the town council, a detailed review with the responsible finance officer, and also an explanation of the assets of the council and how they are either invested perhaps or the value of them, etc. This is something that perhaps the council and new council should have a better idea of. And I am conscious that we have lost two councillors to a very unfair failure of the whole process, and we might all want to intake that and intake Councillor Manning's scrutiny as well. So, with that being put onto the agenda of finance and general purposes, I apologise, Chair, that we were imposing that. Councillor Manning, are you happy for us to move forward? So, anyone else wish to speak to this? You've been asked to notice it has gone through a full procedure, including criminal bit. So, and I would advise you have for me to sign these documents. Thank you. While I do so, we now move on to item 12, which is to consider the internal auditor's report on opposition to implement any recommendation. Do you wish to speak to this?
Thank you, Your Worship. Members, the internal auditor's report was received today and has been tabled for you. So, whilst His Worship signs the income and expenditure and balance sheet, I would encourage you to have a quick scan through it, and then I can highlight the points that were raised in that report to members in about 30 seconds to a minute's time. So if I may continue speaking to it, Your Worship, I will just highlight that the items that were raised by the internal auditor, in their opinion, were not sufficient to affect the view that overall the council has adequate controls and procedures in place. And they are of the opinion that where there have been instances of control deficiencies, the financial statements have not been affected. So, in essence, I'm a firm believer in there is always room for improvement, and that is essentially what the internal auditor has come back and said. So in terms of control objective B regards the timely filing of VAT returns, there was an occasion during the pandemic when HMRC said that they would not have to be filed quite so regularly as previously. So that's what the responsible finance officer had done, and the internal auditor picked up on that. However, our financial regulations only state that they are filed in a timely fashion. So I would argue it's up to interpretation as to exactly when timely is, whether that's quarterly or 6 monthly. There's no hard and fast rule. For instance, my council files them 6 monthly, and that's what the responsible finance officer had done in this case. Control objective H is regards the asset register. There was a copy of the asset register that the previous town clerk was using that had no values attached to it, and hence the values had not changed. The responsible finance officer and I are going to work very closely together in drafting up a new asset register that is more comprehensive in terms of values and dates of acquisition of assets, etc. So that is in process. Control objective N regards the publishing of items on the website regards to the annual governance and accountability return. The internal auditor picked up that documents were uploaded slightly late to the website. Now, the responsible finance officer looked into this, and actually on that occasion the website was actually down, and our website administrator was not able to upload the documents on the day. I think they were only a few days late, but the responsible finance officer looked into that, and they have been available on the website ever since and still are. There was one item about reimbursements to council staff in terms of expenses, and once the expense claim had been received to then sign a document. That is in process. I'm trying to improve some of the internal processes regards things like expenses. And again, I'll be working with the responsible finance officer on the projected use of reserves to produce an earmarked reserve document, which can be something that full council can keep an eye on and review, because that's something that the internal auditor picked up that we currently didn't do. So I can answer questions, Your Worship, to the best of my ability. It's not a process that I was hugely close with. However, I will try my very best, or I can refer questions from members back to the responsible finance officer. But overall, it's very much a room for improvement, but the council is governed and operates in a very safe way. Thank you, Your Worship.
In our role, we're a little bit like trustees of charity. We're not doing day-to-day operation, we're not in management, but we are in governance. And the ultimate responsibility obviously lies with the Department of Responsible Finance. But we also share in that as elected members. So if you do have any questions with that, please raise your hand.
Yes, having read the recommendations put forward, I propose that we accept those recommendations and move forward. And I thank the clerk for his explanation.
Thank you. Anybody wish to speak against that? I'm looking for a second. Councillor Mann? All those in favour?
I have 15 in favour, Your Worship.
And one abstention.
Yep.
Thank you very much. So, councillors, we now move on to item 13 to approve the annual governance statement.
May I please just chip in here, Your Worship, to alert members as to exactly which piece of paper we're reviewing here, because we have to review the forms in an order. So the front sheet, which you have, is entitled Annual Governance and Accountability Return 2021-22 Form 3. That is an explanation of the things that the sheet over leaf is looking at. So that's not what we're reviewing. This agenda item is specifically about section 1, which is over leaf, entitled Annual Governance Statement 2021-22. So this is where, as you can see in the table, the council must tick in the yes or no column, which it best feels reflects the statements to the left-hand side.
Thank you. Anybody wish to speak to this?
Answer the question. Item 5 on section 1 is about the risk register. And I'm just curious whether or not the full council ever reviews the risk register or something else.
I'm not sure, Your Worship, if the full council has ever reviewed the risk register. However, I'm more than happy for it to be an agenda item for a future meeting.
I would suggest it's an agenda item for the next finance and general purposes meeting. Any other comments, councillors? So for the benefit of councillors, I'm asking this question. Who has actually put the ticks in that box? Is it an external person or the responsible finance officer or another member officer?
It is the responsible finance officer who I believe has filled in these 2 sheets of paper.
So councillors, we are scrutinising this document, and agreeing it, we are agreeing with information to it.
Sure. I think if we're going to agree to this, I mean, I think either A, we've got to trust the RFO, which I think, you know, we all do, pretty much. If we were to scrutinise it and want to be part of the process, maybe we should have a meeting with her before this document is taken. So I think either way, we either agree with it and trust Jane, she's doing a good job, or we want to be involved, we should get involved with it.
Fair point, Councillor. I am conscious it's not just only just been elected for the first time.
Sure. So, I mean, I would tend to trust the article.
For me, myself, I would trust it too. So, but I'm just, as this is the first time I've had to do this with new councillors, when we're putting our name against them, picture, I think we do need to be mindful. We will be taking a vote if I hear a vote.
I propose that we approve the annual government statement.
I'm happy to say.
Anybody wish to speak against that proposal? I'll move to vote. All those in favour?
I have that as unanimous, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Connor, you mentioned going through these papers in the correct order. Are we finished with this item of paper?
No, Your Worship. The next agenda item, which is to approve the accounting statements, is the very last page, section 2, titled Accounting Statements 2021-22.
Thank you. Councillors, any observations? Any comments? Any votes?
Section 2, is it?
Yeah. Thank you, Mark.
I'd just like to clarify that the figure, item 9, is correct. That's 4, it's 7 figure, suggesting it begins with 4 million. Is that correct?
It looks like the figures have been worked out and
No, I'm referring to the enormity of the sum.
Yeah.
Yes, Your Worship. In my research, in applying for the transitional town clerk role, I looked at this document going back a number of years, and your total fixed assets plus long-term investments and assets has always been just a smidge over £4 million.
and possibly we found all the tops. So, councillors, do I hear a motion?
I'm happy to propose that we accept these figures.
Thank you, Councillor Smart. Anybody wish to speak again? Councillors, all those in favour?
I have that again unanimous, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. Come on, we dispense with this sheet of paper now.
You will be pleased to know, yes, you have, Your Worship. You will have a copy to sign in the future, but that's when we know the minute reference of this agenda item, so that will be done at a later date.
Thank you, Connor. So we move to item 15. We receive budget monitoring report. This is from the 1st of April this year to the 8th of June. Any comments, observations, questions? Those who said
Last question. Just for clarification, is the budget as stated for the full 12 months or only for the first 3 months, which I'm sure the first
the budget is the full budget. I understand. Conor, would you just clarify that I'm speaking the truth?
Yes, I believe that is the case, Your Worship, because yes, the budget line, you'll see the very top line precept 419160. That's the precept that this council set for this account. Well, the accounting year for which this budget monitoring report relates. So yes,
we received the precept in 2 sums. So we thought this would indicate we've already received the first amount, and we will receive the second based on the year. In September. Any other observations? Councillor.
Yes, thank you. Point 10 on the notes. Actually, we haven't hired any permanent or we know that the ground maintenance, just that it's what is proposed and the actual is quite high. Are we going to?
We're advertising on
Okay.
balance from the fund.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, yes, the previous council carried over into this financial year for the budget an amount of money that had previously been identified for a team leader post for the caretaking and community services team. That role, up until very recently, had been undertaken by the town clerk, not for extra pay, but just rather than actually fill that position. At the very recent staffing committee meeting, various decisions were made regards the pay scales of current members of staff and their roles and responsibilities, and it was felt at this time there was not a requirement for a team leader. The town hall manager, Jackie, is now the line manager of the caretaking and community services team, and the town council are currently recruiting for an additional part-time community services officer to supplement the work that our caretaking and community services team do here for the town council. So yes, the budget for staff is quite high. I'm pleased to say that as part of the living wage employer resolution, several members of staff received an uplift in their take-home pay. Whilst that certainly will not take up the entire amount of the staffing budget, because also the previous town clerk left a year early, so that leaves 11 of 12 months of that budgeted salary unused. However, between the uplifts to various members' take-home pay in regards of the review that was done by the staffing committee of their roles, responsibilities and pay grades, and the recruitment of the additional part-time community services officer, the amount of money budgeted for the team leader post has pretty much all been spent. However, there is the flexibility within the overall staffing budget because of the previous town clerk's decision to retire 11 months earlier than budgeted for.
It's been mentioned to me that the charger doesn't work. The electric vehicle charger. Does it car park? Does it work? Because somebody mentioned to me that it doesn't work.
We only have one.
Or two.
I can, Your Worship. I'm not 100% certain on the detail. However, we are meant to have 2 EV charging points in the car park. We are experiencing recurring problems with one of them, and we've called the company out a number of times. I do not know the detail as to whether that is currently broken. However, I would not be surprised if it were at the moment. I will take that away and ask my colleagues in the office to see what the status of that is. I will take that away as an action.
Thank you very much. Any other observations? Oh, sorry.
I just have one more question. I mean, the documents full of figures and there's a story behind every figure. I just had a question about town hall lettings, which is very close to note 3 on page 1. Just because it's a very large figure, 38,000 for the budget, but a very small amount of money has come in, a lot less than a quarter of the expected total. So I just wanted to flag that up as a significant cut in the budget.
I think that's a very good observation, Councillor. Would you wish to speak to it?
Thank you, Councillor Lokabandu. I will take that away and ask that as a query. It may well just be that it's been very busy since the election. It may well be that the invoicing is not quite up to scratch, but I'm not saying that's the case. That's the only thing I can perhaps think. Or it might be that in fact regular bookings maybe don't pay monthly. I will take that away again as an action to ask, and I'll have an answer sent to you via email if that works. Thank you.
Well, I may be wrong, but surely after the 12 months after the order, obviously a lot bigger. That's just a month's worth of letting. So
it should be 3 months worth.
April to June.
April. Okay, 2 months.
Well, it's only 5 weeks. First of April to the 8th of June. 9 months. Oh, big pardon.
It was a very good May this year. Yeah. So maybe you're spellbound by it.
May I quickly again, sorry, Your Worship, just come in on that one. It will probably be worth highlighting to members that that budget line will probably come in under the expected because of the necessity to close the town hall during the works of replacing the heating system. So I will certainly take it away as an action. I can assure you that everything that happens here gets invoiced, but I will have that detail provided to you.
Thank you very much. Any other observations? So, we are just to receive this, so we note it and handle it. We now move. Councillors, if you do have any questions, if you take this away and you have any questions about any of the spend, do get in touch with the responsible finance officer so we can answer any questions. So we now move to schedule payments for you. And is there any observations or questions? We are to receive and approve these, they do need to be signed off. That should be amended, I think, in the agenda.
Okay, Your Worship. I'll bear that in mind, thank you. There is a copy here in my file for yourself and the Deputy Mayor to sign, should that be the wish of Council.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody wish to speak against that? Councillor all those in favour?
I have that as unanimous, Your Worship.
And while I'm signing this form, I ask Conor to speak to the required repairs to the town hall.
Thank you, Your Worship. I absolutely will do. If I may just backtrack ever so slightly, I've been in touch with both Jane and Jackie whilst we've been reviewing the schedule of payments. They're obviously watching at home. In terms of the town hall lettings, it is just a case, Councillor Locabandu, that the invoicing is not exactly up to date as it should be because it has been very busy. Jane has reminded me that at the next Finance and General Purposes Committee meeting, there will be an agenda item for 2 councillors or more, because you're all equal, who wish to come in every now and then and scrutinise the finances in more detail to nominate yourselves, and I'm sure we will be more than open to any members wishing to come in and take more interest in the finances. Well, I'm sure Jane will be. Personally, they bore me, but if they interest you and they interest Jane, that's excellent. So in terms of the required repairs to the town hall lift, unfortunately very recently the town hall lift malfunctioned. I did provide all members with a report, so I shan't talk about it too long. Our caretaker Les did sadly get trapped in the lift, but we did manage to rescue him. The lift engineer had to come out twice on that day because he thought he'd repaired the issue but actually hadn't. And we've since been advised that an electrical component called the main drive unit has failed. Unfortunately, it's a very expensive part, but it's a critical part of the lift. I've been told it acts essentially as a large inverter. So rather than us have a very large motor to haul the lift up and down, this component alters the voltage provided to the motor to allow the lift to ascend and descend depending on how much weight's within it. I've been advised that these components have an average lifespan of about 10 years, and ours is now 13 years old. So sadly, it's a bit of a case of natural wear and tear and use of the lift, and it is now requiring repair.
Thank you, Connor. Any councillors wish to speak?
I noticed the recommendations, and I see 4.2, the cost of this work to be taken from the town hall specific maintenance budget line. Is there a figure on that? Is it 20,000 a year?
The town hall specific maintenance budget line has £25,000 against it for this financial year.
So 10,000 and 3,000.
Yes.
Connor, can I just check if we, I mean, obviously we need to get this fixed, but will that leave us at a disadvantage within that budget?
I don't believe so, Your Worship. I've chatted this through with the responsible finance officer, and she was also of the opinion that that's the best place to take this expenditure from. I will say that we've only had the one quote in. I'm hoping that the council will authorise me to seek quotes and then to instruct the best value quote, which is not necessarily the cheapest, but the best value, up to a price of £10,000, given that the quote we have received, I'm just seeking authorisation to then, once they're sought, to then action the lift repair, because it is a vital part of the town hall for our members of the public who not only rent the hall but wish to come to council meetings.
Thank you.
I would recommend that we delegate seeking additional quotes.
I'm happy to second that.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak against that? I'll show of hands all over.
I think that is 44.
Anyone wish to?
Excuse me, Your Worship. Will that come back to the council?
No, we're just working on delegating that out to Connor.
Delegate, okay.
Was there any voting against? Or any abstention? How many did you count?
Your Worship, I counted a vote from everyone except for Councillor Napper.
Councillor Napper, are you wishing to vote for, against?
Oh, I voted
for. Vote for.
So I believe Your Worship, that was unanimous.
Thank you very much. Councillor. We now move to consider the proposal from Park to reduce the carbon and cost impact of meetings today. Connor, would you wish to speak?
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, members, I compiled a report with the Climate Emergency and Resilience Officer, Melissa, to try and understand the impact of the amount of printing that is required for meetings, and also the impact of either postage or having these delivered to members' addresses. Now, as I've quoted, the legislation that governs how councils function was written in 1972 and hasn't particularly been touched since. It's sort of been tinkered with but never really reviewed. So the legislation does read that you'll receive your papers in paper form, and they shall be left at or sent by post to the usual place of residence of every member of the council. So I shan't go through in detail the impacts that Melissa has identified in terms of the climate change impact, or the impacts that I've highlighted in terms of financial information. And you've all had my recommendations to consider, and I will happily take questions. I will just say this is not this will not necessarily be a blanket policy. If there are members who still wish to receive papers, either picking them up or via post or having them delivered, that of course will not be refused and will be obliged to, but it was just to consider the impact in terms of the environment and cost for the current process of providing papers, because we're going through very nearly a ream, if not more, of paper per meeting. We can all see here just what was tabled and what certain members have brought along, but I can assure you a lot more goes out in the post.
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Certainly, this is one item. A minor one, which is ream, is spelled R-E-A-M, which short ream is 480 pages, and a long ream is 500. But more appropriately, an option would be to project the agenda onto the wall, and then all of the various documents and so on. I know that's going to be difficult for us, but I'm very conscious of how much paper we've got here. And so, certainly, like someone, at least, the chair or a minute taker, needs a hard copy, and people who really, really want a hard copy could have. But certainly, with the things going around by email, that would save an awful lot.
Anyone else to speak?
Yes, I feel great conflict here because of course I want to save the planet, and not using paper does that. On the other hand, receiving stuff by email and then bringing my phone to a meeting and trying to read it by email just would not work for me. I wouldn't actually be able to take the information in or deal with it adequately because I'm an oldie and I'm used to stuff on paper. If I was 18, I'd probably be okay with the phone. The idea of having it projected up on the screen so one would actually read it properly and take it in, that might work. I might be willing to give it a try and see if you know, I could actually take in the information properly that way. Having had it emailed to me so I can see it on my laptop before the meeting anyway, which I always do look at it all before the meeting. I would certainly be happy to pick it up from the GIC on a Tuesday morning when I'm at the market. That would not be a problem at all. So in terms of no postage and no delivery charges, that's not a problem. But my problem is whether I can adequately take in the information if it's not on paper, whilst being in conflict about wanting to save the planet. So is where I'm at.
Many to spell that for.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think that your suggestion on the screen is very good because the people there will be able to follow it, and sometimes it's very difficult to support. But I would also say that I would like to support the postman because I think that he's possibly a dying commodity, and but I think that we should support him.
And the post lady. So we now have the deputy mayor.
Yes, I'm in favour of this, quite horrifying, and also the fact of Connor having to go out by hand and actually posting everything is quite sad. I would like to, I was going to suggest also that, but also I was going to bring my tablet. I'm happy to bring my tablet, obviously, yeah, the phone, yeah, that would be never work, even at 18-year-old. So yes, tablets or laptops. Will people be alright bringing their laptops? Is that great? Thank you.
I think seriously go ahead, we should give it a try. I think that on the screen, some of us may have our individual devices, and obviously some people do still want paper, but I think definitely we've got to experiment.
And good.
Yeah, I think say about laptops as well, but I think practically in this environment it's absolutely a no. Where you're going to plug them into, you know, you're talking about 3-hour meetings, you know, people's battery's going to go down, so you need charging points. You know, there's a whole lot of particular items you're going to need to do that, because I would think if one brought their laptop in, I'd bring mine in, and I think we all probably would be better, because we need to see what we're looking at. We need to go through everything. So, you know, unless you're going to, you know, really electric this place entirely as well, as a plumbing, I can't see laptops working here at all. And who's going to be liable for any damage caused to a laptop here? You know, we could have calls over there or something. You know, I mean, anything can happen. You know, it's all that kind of equipment here, and it's expensive. I think that's a no.
Well,
Right, reply?
well,
No, that's fine.
why don't you reply?
That's about what's happening in 3 hours in then like people just do documents and stuff. So we have to ask to which one?
Well, thank you. Now, thank you.
So in theory, I think this is a fantastic idea. I've got a question. What percentage of our carbon emissions is this? Just to put it in perspective. I completely agree with what Lee was saying about the practicalities, because at the moment we've got all sorts of plugs in the middle of the room to plug our laptops in. And has anyone thought that then it then might be a requirement for us to be supplied with equipment if somebody hasn't got equipment or is broken or anything like that? So that's something to consider as well.
Thank you. Campbell?
I feel the same about, like, I don't want to have all this paper. I understand the implications of it. But the other day at one of the committee meetings, I was trying to do, there are two documents to look at. I'm trying to do it on little phones, hopeless. So, and I don't have a laptop, and I don't have a computer. I've only got a little phone. So I would be great to pick it up from I don't mind picking it up from anywhere. But it would be hard for me to do it without some of the paper.
Likewise, I've got reservations on whether it would be a great idea. I think we'd have to totally refurbish this room with PowerPoints, possibly as health and safety of trip hazards to consider. There's also the point that Councillor Osborne made about some of us haven't got adequate, we have to be supplied with the equipment. I would have a problem picking up papers from the Gas Information Centre before every meeting, because obviously we've got work commitments. It wouldn't always tie in, it wouldn't always guarantee that I'll get the papers in time. So as much as I'd like to support all of these recommendations, that it's a bit of a minefield.
Thank you. Any other people to skip this? Councillor Wine, you've already spoken to it.
Just very, very briefly, and that is on recommendation 4.3. Rather than just say by a show of hands now, could we inform the clerk where whether we want to pick up papers or
Thank you. Councillor
When it's made an option, if you want to place you get paper, you have to bring a laptop here. Do that. I'm doing it myself by drowning if the world is something. Because I use that all the time. Usually, I think I'm a little bit slightly more likely to be organised with that on paper. So you could say we might save half the paper. You know, you can just opt one or the other.
Thank you. Well, I have a question, Connor, which is, I'm very conscious that this Government Act, meaning that we actually do have to, by law, receive the papers. So could you just clarify that we wouldn't be being unlawful in receiving an email? Have you any advice from SARC or not?
I can assure you that we wouldn't be unlawful. Councils can, by resolution, agree that receiving their notice of public meeting, summons and agenda, or one document, can be done by email, and for that to be a perfectly valid method of receiving your agenda and summons, but that has to be done by a resolution of the council. So if I could just talk through the recommendations that I have written, and by all means, you don't have to vote on these exact recommendations, you can make your own proposals, etc., etc. So the first recommendation, to consent to receive your summons, agenda and reports by email, that just makes the administration for myself and the team an awful lot easier, because I have to get your summons, agenda, not necessarily reports, but certainly your summons and agenda to all members within 3 clear days of the meeting. that's sometimes complicated when I have to also have everything printed out, collated, and I have to go and stick it through all of your doors. So if you were to agree to recommendation 4.1, that would make the admin of holding lawful meetings a lot easier for myself and the team, but that would not necessarily preclude anyone from receiving paper copies. So that's the first recommendation. The second recommendation was, it does take quite a long time for myself and Jackie either to drop round all papers ourselves, because the postal service is not very, very reliable, and I can't guarantee to always have all information I want you to have ready for it to go out in the post and you to receive it in good time ahead of the meeting. And if there were councillors who were regularly in town who would be quite happy to pick up a printed bundle if they wanted one from the information centre, I just wish to pose that as an option, because if I didn't have to deliver 16 but I only had to deliver 6 or 10, that makes a surprising difference for every single meeting that I have to put around papers. But of course, if there are members such as yourself, Councillor Smythe, who couldn't commit to that, then by all means they can either be posted or delivered to your door. It would just make it easier if there were councillors who were willing and able to pick up regularly from the information centre for that to be done. In terms of for members to indicate, so recommendation that the third one, 4.3, to indicate by a show of hands who still wishes to regularly receive printed papers, you can perhaps take out and pick them up, because it might be that some do wish for them to be posted. That was just to give me an indication of how many packs I was to collate and bundle up each time. So for instance, if there were 10 members who were quite happy to do everything digitally, and therefore 6 regularly wanted printed packs, I would only regularly print out and bundle up 6 packs rather than 16. And that would obviously have an impact on 1, the time it takes, 2, the cost, and 3, the environmental impact. And of course, I do recognise that in chairing a meeting it's very difficult. In me and clerking a meeting, I like to make sure that I've got all the papers here in this file and I can flick through it. I was never recommending that a chair of any committee should go without a printed set of papers, because it's much easier to run a meeting with a set of papers, and they would either be available in the meeting room, or such as yourself your worship, bring them along if you've received them ahead of time. So without wishing to complicate it, it's entirely up to members as to what you wish to do. I would really be grateful if you could consider recommendation 4.1, and that's just to be summoned by email. And then for you to consider those of you who don't necessarily need it brought round to your house, but may be regularly in town, and for those members who are willing and able to regularly pick it up, to indicate how many, so I would know how many packs to put in the information centre. It strikes me now that I've written these the wrong way round, but and then for members to indicate how many people still regularly want a printed bundle, and whether that's to be posted or picked up. That's probably the easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
And then 4.3. So anyway, I shall take a seat.
So there's nothing in the legislation that says having to receive our papers, agendas, reports, etc. In law. So the only thing that we have to receive by post is the summons, which is this piece of paper. So I would suggest that receiving the agenda report, etc. by email is something that we can consider. I really, it's not that I don't believe in it, but I would really like to seek some advice from a written response from Justin, on whether or not we are being lawful if we don't send summons by post. That's what's written in, actually in the answers we've got about post. If they can come back and take basically responsibility for saying yes or no on that, that's our advice, and then we can move forward with that. So, first of all, councillors, I would like to see a show of hands of councillors.
Can I ask a question?
Point of order, yes.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I've had my hand up for a while.
I do apologise.
You weren't seeing. Is this referring just to these monthly town council meetings, or is it referring to all the different meetings that there are?
I was intending it to cover all committee meetings. However, in light of our discussions this evening, might it be prudent in also seeking this advice for me to bring this back to a future meeting with a little bit more detail on how I would actually, well, I know how I would work it, but with the various points raised tonight, I think it would probably be best, Your Worship, if it's suitable with you, to work on this a little bit more and bring it back to a future meeting.
I would like to propose that, and this may be the case anyway, but that all of the agenda reports and all of this basically gets emailed to us as a matter of principle, whether or not we can still receive or not receive stuff by post. Just so we're getting into the habit of receiving the papers electronically, and you're in the habit of sending them electronically, then should we receive the advice from not one way or the other, then it will be down to members to say whether or not they wish to have printed papers as well. But in the meantime, we will still receive printed papers until we have advice. This is what I would like to propose. I think two people should speak to this.
I was going to say, do we not already receive quite a lot by email? I know I do.
Yes, I believe you do, and I have been trying to get into the habit, whilst I have been clerk, of ensuring that everything you receive by post, you also receive as an email in case there are either a delay in getting it to you in a printed copy, or some people do prefer reading it on a device, and I know councillors here don't necessarily bring one along, but that is an option. But so is bringing printed paper. So yes, you do already receive this by email. It was just around the legality of actually summoning members, which I know can be done by email, but I will seek the guidance of SAP and have that in a written form.
Thank you, Your Worship. Should there be a 4.4 there of Aziz?
Yeah, 4.3
Oh,
so
yeah.
good that it was mentioned. But,
I do apologise.
Connor, I will withdraw my motion. Will come back to a future meeting.
Yes, I absolutely will, Your Worship.
Sorry. Anthony, would you like to say what you're going to say?
I was going to say that I actually gone through some issues like that. It works very well, except that you do need to have potentially to work, because I know modern ones last for ages, but unfortunately everyone's going. And yes, we are moving to.
So, councillors, we now move on to the next item, which is 18, Municipal Award. Connor, speak.
I'm sure you're all thoroughly fed up of my voice. So this has come around because of the ceremony that is being held for a very eminent visitor at the end of this week. An anonymous donor has paid for a ceremonial key that was presented to the then mayor in 1938 to commemorate the opening of the post office on the High Street. And for those members who have not seen it, it's a silver gilt key that looks like this. And the anonymous donor has paid for that to be replicated and engraved to present to the visitor who's coming on Friday. Many towns and cities around the world have a sort of key to the city kind of award for visitors. So if you consider what awards this council can give out, aldermen for previous councillors who've served for a long time, and freemen for those who probably live in and around the town and have made a large contribution to the town over a number of years. Neither of those are really suitable for a really eminent visitor who is received in the town hall with a civic reception. So, since it was the wish of the anonymous donor to have this key replicated, it was thought between officers and also some members that having this as a civic award available to the town council at their wish to represent to eminent visitors might be a nice idea. So just for reference, this is the replicated key that will be presented to the eminent visitor on Friday. It will be engraved on one side with the key of Avalon and on the reverse presented by the mayor. So basically timeless, it can be any mayor. And it will be for any eminent visitors who are received by the town council at civic reception at your discretion. and it's envisaged that this will be a very rare honour for a very famous guest. So it's for members to consider, and I hope you've had a chance to read the report I wrote. May I just, sorry, I've forgotten something. In terms of actually paying, if council were to wish to order a stock of these keys, the civic regalia budget for this year was only put in at £500. However, I'm pleased to report that after months of chasing since I've been transitional town clerk and now town clerk, that Mendip District Council have today issued a purchase order for the £150 per week that they offered as a subsidy for our loss of income for the use of St Dunstan's car park as a market venue. Now, because that was agreed after last year's budget was set, it wasn't in last year's budget, and it's again not in this year's budget. So that's unbudgeted income that is coming into the town council to the tune of £7,500. So that would be an option for paying for this new civic award should the council wish to add it to the books, as it were.
Councillor Osborne,
I just want to get some clarity on this. We were talking earlier about, like the demographic of the area, and I actually wonder how many people in Glastonbury know who this eminent visitor is. I mean, I do, because I remember when he was called a little fat boy who went around with a Rolls Royce. Somebody others around there should be old enough to remember that. But I'm not quite sure. I mean, it's this enormous donor. I mean, can anyone decide somebody's eminent and donate the key? I mean, this is voted on by somebody at some point. I'm just trying to find out why. Obviously it's anonymous, I don't know who's donated it, but why him? What's the mechanism? Can anybody sort of donate an anonymous key to anyone they fancy, or what? I just want to understand.
it was put to full council in a meeting and voted on unanimously. Oh, no, one abstention.
Okay, so, but sorry, it would have been helpful if that had been in paperwork, so that's how it was. And that would be the mechanism by which any other person is determined to be eminent.
That would be the mechanism for the council to decide whether it's going to hold a civic reception.
Right. So could there be without a civic reception?
The key is a brand new thing that came out of this thing arising, and the council are happy to move forward with this. We ask now, as that was a decision made by the former council, whether or not we wish to get some other keys made so that in the future, if the council ever wishes to bestow such an honour on somebody else, that would be the option. And that's what Connor's bringing to us now. He's also letting us know that there's some money for that. It will be down to the council today to decide if and who they wish to give that honour to.
So we could buy another 10 keys at £400 a pop and never use them because no one on the council ever wants to do it.
That is a possibility. It is, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Just wanted to clarify.
We could also buy 10 and find we should have got 15, of course. But
there aren't that many other people, even in your voices. You never know.
Well, I don't know what stage is that comment, but we shouldn't bring things like that into our decision now about whether or not we wish as a council to take the recommendation of the clerk or not. I mean, it's not said that even if we were, we might decide not to. So, Councillor Marsh, would you speak to this? No, I thought we had an answer. Well,
yeah, so looking at the £7,500 that Mendip have kindly, well, that they've come up with the goods at last. This will approximately cost £2,000 to have 5. I thank you for your research and your recommendations, and I'd like to move to vote and recommend that we approve your recommendations. So
those who move to vote, I'm going to just respect the councillors down down to rate before we do. So that's mine.
Yeah.
Did you wish to do something?
Yes, I wonder what the advantages are of pre-ordering in bulk. Can we not just get one made as and when?
The advantages of pre-ordering in bulk, or like 5's not necessarily bulk, but is essentially the price. So I can assure you the price that the anonymous donor paid for 1 key was a lot higher, including the casting fee, than we would perhaps pay if we were to order 5. So that price that's in your paperwork is based on ordering 5. If you were to only order 1, it would cost more per unit. So the anonymous donor has paid for the key to be cast, so that's not something that, moulded, sorry. So we don't have to pay the moulding fee. Fattorini's, the company, now hold that mould, and if we were to then order subsequent keys, basically the more you order, the cheaper each key is, and it was felt that 5 was a happy medium between getting not an exorbitant price per item, but also not having so many keys that, as Councillor Osborne highlighted, you might never use them. It was my impression in thinking through this and doing the research on other cities and towns who have this kind of honour, that it probably would be something that's only ever gifted once per council term, if that. So essentially the short answer to your question, Councillor McDougall, is the price, is the advantage of purchasing 5 as opposed to purchasing 1.
So, the duty to come back is priced at £380.63, and times that by 5, and that's something along the lines of 19.
Well, it doesn't say what the reduction in price is.
Yes, granted, I haven't in this report listed how much a single key would be. I think it would be unfair given that an anonymous donor has paid for this single key to reveal how much that cost. But I can assure you it's an awful lot more than £382.63.
So, Councillor Cook and Councillor
Thank you. Yeah, so it's a prestigious award that, coming from a very prestigious and recognised town, and we're arguing about whether making 1 or 5 and turning it into a kind of, seaside town resort, and we just get these awards whenever we want. Personally, I think it's a bit of an insult to the person we're actually awarding the award to.
I don't think we're arguing about it.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of an insult, quite honestly. And if a cost is a cost for 1 key for what, 2 years, 3 years, you're not doing this every year, are you? It's a one-off. There should be 1 key, and the recipient should be aware of that. Right.
Thank you. Councillor Mann.
I just wanted to observe that the key has been paid for by an anonymous donor, presumably will remain an anonymous donor. So the fact that this amount is disclosed and to ourselves is how much 1 key would cost, I don't see what issues that would cause.
That's a fair point, Councillor. Anyone wish to speak? So, Connor, can you give us a ballpark figure of how much a single key might be, just so the councillors are aware of that before we make any decision?
Yes, a single key would be in the region of £1,000.
So, the clerk is asking us to consider whether or not to purchase a number of these keys. He suggested 5. And we know that if we bought them singularly, they're going to cost about 3 times the amount.
Could we wait until we actually do need another key and then say, okay, well, that's what we get fine?
Thank you. Connor, is there a time issue related to this?
There's not a time issue in the Town Council requiring the keys. However, as per normal business practice, the quote will only be valid for 30 days. So should the council wish in a number of years' time to come back and purchase a single key, as with everything, the price may be a great deal higher, and it may be something that if you did a cost-benefit idea, you might not feel it was worth it. It's completely up to members as to whether you think this is a good idea or not, and I'll leave it in all of your hands.
So, Councillor Shirt, and then Councillor White.
Oh, yes, sorry. I haven't got the right end of the stick yet. Do we own the cup? The mould?
The mould is exclusively for our use, but it is held by Fattorini's, the company that make the key.
Right. Why don't we just hang on and see if another eminent person warrants this award? And we never have one made then. So we're then going to blame money up and short term. Is that a bit simple?
No, it's your observation, Councillor. Are you proposing?
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah,
So, Councillor White wishes to speak before that.
I was going to say something different, that the price of production is likely to go up with the way the modern world works, and so therefore 5 is a good number for that.
Thank you. So, Councillor Knight, you put forward a motion that we wait. And I believe exactly that has been included. Do I hear an amendment to that motion or an alternative motion from them? So, Councillor Knight.
Not for anything, it was just a question, was are we saying that the Councillor Much's motion, that we wait? Oh, sorry. Are we saying that we wait, or we just find out?
I think Councillor Much has said that we wait until we find such time, maybe in the future, maybe when none of the councils did, we wish to make another one. That's the decision that has been put forward.
Clarification. Conor, when you were describing this motion, did you say that this is something that many other towns and cities have? Is this quite a standard award that is given out to prestigious businesses?
I wouldn't say it was necessarily standard, but yes, there are a number of towns and cities, not only in this country but around the world, who have this kind of honour for people who come to visit that town or city, are treated to a civic reception, and this honour is given to them because no other honour is suitable, as I sort of listed around Alderman Freeman. So yes, it is something that, without being 10 a penny, is relatively common. We certainly wouldn't be the first, we certainly wouldn't be the last, but it's not something that every town and city does. But if you do a quick Google search, then yes, there are a number of towns and cities who have this kind of award, a key to the city, a key to the town, for people who come to visit.
I think we're considering two things at once, again slightly muddled up between them. So one is adding the key number to our civic award offer with the criteria as important too. And the second thing is spending £20,000 on buying stock. I think maybe if we took the one at a time, it would be a bit clearer. I'm picking up their support for the principle of the government, but not particularly spending £2,000.
I see. So you're referring to reference 4.1. Councillor Much, would you be happy to wait for the motion to be considered and for us to consider the first recommendation, which is that we add the key element of the civic awards that we may, as a council, decide at some point in the future to give? So do I have a proposal that we...
I would take 4.1 and 4.2 together. 4.2 outlines a bit how key element would work.
Are you putting forward a proposal and do you mind standing for yours?
So I'm happy to propose a motion, is that right?
Yeah.
That we accept recommendations 4.1 and 4.2.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. That's by Deputy Mayor. Does anyone wish to speak against that? And I have to hand all those in favor. Find out the proposal on 2.
I've got 14 in favour, Your Worship.
And do anyone wish to vote against? Any abstentions?
One abstention.
All councillors voted.
Yes, Your Worship.
And now we come to Councillor Nutt's motion, which is that we don't buy any more keys at this time, and we return to this subject item if and when we ever do want to award somebody else. That's your motion, and that's been seconded by Councillor Wood. Does anybody wish to amend that motion? Anybody wish to speak against that motion? Councillor Smart.
Yeah, I haven't seen the figures of sort of what we've gone, knowing that would increase to £1,000 if we only decided tonight to buy just that one. It makes no sense to me at all, so I'd rather spend £2,000 on 5 than £1,000 on one.
The council has got two options there. You either propose an alternative motion or you vote against the motion. So, all those in favour of the motion?
I have 4 in favour, Your Worship.
All those against?
I have 11, Your Worship.
All those abstaining?
And all members have voted.
Thank you. So, councillors, we now have item 4.3, which is consider recommendation to buy 5 requisite keys, and this will cost us somewhere in the region of £1,900.
Yes, Your Worship. It is an omission by myself for that not to have been excluded explicitly. However, it will be the figure per key times 5. If you give me just 1 second, mental arithmetic is not my strong point. £382.63 times 5. That will cost the Town Council £1,913.15, excluding carriage.
Councillors, is there any further motion to be put forward around resolving this issue?
Propose that 4.3 takes forward.
So I've got a proposal that we accept recommendation 4.3. Is there a second there?
May I just speak to that, sorry, Your Worship? 4.3, as written in the report, recommends that we move money from the staffing budget to the civic regalia budget. However, I highlighted earlier that we're now in receipt of £7,500 of unbudgeted income. So I would just ask members to consider whether either they wish to specify where the money comes from, or whether they just wish to say we'll buy 5 replicator keys and leave it to the clerk and responsible finance officer to work out where the money comes from.
Sorry, I was just redoing the proposal, sorry. Sorry, point of clarity, I'm not sure what we just voted on and what we're about to vote on.
So we voted on,
Sorry.
we voted on Councillor Mush's motion, which was that we wait until such a time as we might decide that there could be no recipient of this, and then we would make one. And that was seconded, and that was voted against.
And then you voted against.
We haven't voted against at all.
Sorry, it's very like
This might not be pertinent, but it's something to bear in mind for this video.
So, councillors, we have a proposed motion that we accept item 4.3, but we have to decide where the money is coming from. I would suggest that we take the clerk's advice on that too. And it comes from the money that he has miraculously managed to conjure out of members of the council. I'm not saying that time. Which I think is around about £7,000, right?
Yes, Your Worship. The unbudgeted income is £7,500.
Councillor, are you happy with that being the motion?
Yes.
Is there a second to this motion? Councillor White?
Yeah, Councillor Anderson was.
Yeah, Councillor Anderson was.
Oh.
Anyone wish to speak against this motion? You can have a show of hands all those in favour.
I have 10 in favour, Your Worship. I have 2 against, Your Worship. 3 abstentions, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, everyone. We are through the motion. Receiving from expenditure
Remember, we're moving on to the advisory committee. Number 20.
Sorry, I'll let that one come. To receive road updates on Glastonbury. Councillor.
Thank you. Interestingly, we're all still speaking on all of the recently, I was myself and Mike were teleported to sat at the table. We're interviewed for another, so this is going to be quite quick. Okay. Looking at the finances, the card actually confirmed £11,628 that remains in the budget. But some of this will have to go on the watering, because this is a big impact on the watering. That said, the Fisher Hill project has now been passed to the assets committee, and that will be, that very item will be dealt with on number 21, which is just evidence. So I'm not going to say more about that. The hanging baskets, the update from there, we've had 92, which is absolutely amazing. And the town looks fabulous already. The town will take over boxes now. Lovely coffee for people. I don't know what coffee is. New plans to replace the paper box. There's an update on that. We're explaining that the existing boxes are in poor condition, so they will need to be replaced at some time. We will get an update at the next meeting. The poster competition for children was really fantastic, and the children did an amazing job. And really got behind the whole vision for it, really. And I believe in there actually presenting the children with bread and coffee. They're all brilliant, absolutely fantastic. The two gentlemen, Mr. Morgan and Mr. Penton, went along to an open house for the Glastonbury room and gave us an update and said that was very good, and they felt that it was something that they would like to pursue. The Southwestern Blue, the date for this, judging now, is Wednesday the 6th of July. And sadly, I won't be here, I'll actually be on holiday, but Mike will take over. The sponsorship update is continuing. The trophies, this was quite a bone of contention about the trophies, and I could understand it because the hard work was been sitting by the gentleman, Mr. Clinton, and his colleagues, because they work their socks off in the time, they really do. So what we decided to do, and what I've explored, is basically we have Connor, we've moved the trophy, that's right, isn't it, Connor? So it can be seen by the public. It's now actually in the plastic information centre. I'm exploring the vision of getting a small frame to put particular relevant certificate in. But there are so many certificates that I also think we need to have a book that people can look through with pictures of the drawings and all the pictures of the flowers that were really good. And it would be interesting to have a certificate through. That I'm going to put towards the next meeting on the 23rd to see if anybody approves that. And that really, apart from the date of the presentation, which we know about, the dates have been suggested. I think the committee can't, I don't know whether we've got that far yet, in a date for the actual presentation, but I think it's coming the 23rd, am I right?
I think, Councillor Oakton, yes, off the top of my head, it is a date in October, and it falls just before we plan to close the town hall, which is lovely.
Passion Jubilee, I think we had a tremendous weekend. I was quite impressed by the fact that Ted Allen, managed to persuade the BBC that we should be on immediately after the House C at 9:45, the first beacon to be led in the country. And And I just thought we had tremendous response on Friday to the session. We had lots and lots of children in that session. We meant that night the rest of the night to be Queen and King for the day. Absolutely tremendous as well. And all the things that went on, I think a big show. My only regret is that we didn't hang out in that bunting or flags. But the street who did hang out in bunting and flags, I'm pleased to say, and I'm waiting to hear back on their session and their development. So, neighbour plan, we have been looking at the sites for the local green spaces, and we're bearing that in mind in relation to the new climate and energy emergency, and we're still in the process of doing that, and then neighbour plan meeting is scheduled for.
That is a very good question, Your Worship, putting me on the spot there. The next neighbourhood plan, I believe it's relatively soon. Please forgive me, I've just got a load of dots on my screen.
I think you said 30th of June, something like that.
5th of June, 5th of July. July.
Thank you very much. So we then move on to the climate and environment.
Yes, so we had a lot of new members. It was a very large meeting. Most of the time was spent trying to sort out new terms of reference, and we ended up asking Melissa to look at the original ones together with the ones she drafted and prepare a combination to send out to us to look at and agree to. We also discussed the motion of having the resilience committee, which we just approved and agreed tonight. And then there were a few other items proposed by Susanna that will be debated in greater depth at the next meeting. And the next meeting is going to be quite quick because we need to get the terms of reference sorted and appoint a chair and a deputy chair. I just stood in as an interim during the transition from the previous group to the present group.
Thank you very much.
And I ask you if I could please leave after the report because I've got a very long day tonight. Thank you very much.
So the now item 21 is consider the water emergency. Normally in a council when a decision is made, it can be returned to in 6 months. But someone spoke to this earlier on, and this has been requested that we consider changing the regime that we agreed, which was fortnightly when we met in April for the former council. Conor, would you like to speak to this, please?
In terms of speaking to this, Your Worship, it's a matter for elected members to consider. I would only ask if you are going to suspend the 6-month rule that someone proposes and seconds.
I think we need a little bit of information about what's being asked of us.
Okay, Your Worship. Member of the public, Laura Sorensen, spoke to this earlier. The Mayor has taken members through the April meeting, so granted before a number of you were councillors, that it was agreed to water the new planted areas on Fishers Hill Recreation Ground fortnightly. There's been a request forthcoming by Fishers Hill Gardening Group via elected members to reconsider that decision, as it wasn't felt that fortnightly watering was adequate, and I quote that proposing fortnightly watering was a mistake. So it's been put back on the agenda, but I would, as I say, ask if you are going to reconsider the decision, someone needs to propose a second, you need to take a vote on suspending the 6-month rule, and then you need to consider your decision. However, you may wish to debate that first.
Thank you. I'm very happy to suspend standing orders, which means that all of the standing orders are out the window. What I'm unsure about is what we're being asked to consider. Are we being asked to consider a more regular watering? Would someone council like to do this?
Those young plants and watered, the young plants are watered weekly, especially while it's so hot for this period in the summer.
Thank you. Councillor
My understanding is that we apply off the main that's given solution
And it's a high piece of land compared to that around it, so it's always been great. Without that, we're going to be working uphill forever.
Thank you. I think that's something that's very clear to next property and assets meeting. Yeah. What we're being asked to do is consider the watering regime. We're being asked to consider it weekly. Connor, is that going to put a particular strain on the staff?
I wouldn't necessarily quantify it as a particular strain, however, it is an additional responsibility that the caretaking community services team will have to undertake, and it will take time. I would estimate if it were to be watered weekly, it's going to take a good probably 2 hours of caretakers' time to adequately water the planted areas on Fisher's Hill Recreation Ground. And of course, that does also come at a cost. Glastonbury and Bloom incur a cost of £15 per hour, largely for the manpower to water the floral displays for Glastonbury and Bloom. So it would have to be considered where the money would come from for the increased watering to Fisher's Hill Recreation Ground, particularly because Fisher's Hill Recreation Ground now reports into property and assets, which doesn't necessarily have within its budget for watering, whereas that was previously considered for Glastonbury and Bloom. But if it's members' wishes for it to be watered weekly, that square peg can be rounded by myself and the responsible finance officer with the chairs of relevant committees. But it's up to elected members whether you wish to grant or deny the request to have the new planting on Fisher's Hill Recreation Ground watered weekly rather than fortnightly.
I'm looking for actually survey. I'm looking for.
Okay. So I would propose it as a temporary measure until we can get
Thank you. I would suggest that you go beyond budget money received from mandate as a way of funding this. Anyone want to speak against the motion? Move to vote or vote against?
I have that as unanimous, Your Worship.
There are reinstated standing orders. Was that
Sorry, was it not?
Sorry.
Right, sorry.
Sorry. I remove standing orders and ask if anybody voting against the motion. Anybody abstaining? Probably was unanimous.
I think it was, yes.
Reinstate standing orders. Now we have this grant application coming from Wells Food Network. I'm a very good friend with the chair of the Wells Food Network. Do I have an interest?
I would consider, yes, Your Worship, you'll probably want to declare a prejudicial and a personal interest.
Right, so I'm not voting on this. Anybody wish to speak to this?
Yeah, I think it sounds like a really good. I mean, I don't know whether I should declare an interest because my shop was in the brochure.
I think better safe than sorry, because through this initiative you may experience higher sales. Hopefully, I think probably it is best belt and braces to declare an interest.
Can I speak?
Yes, I would consider that you could speak but not vote.
Okay, thank you. Well, I just thought it was a very good presentation. I think the brochure is really, really good, and it looks like a really good event that could, benefit the whole area. I would just personally question £2,500 is quite a lot of money for. Is it just so the rest of the council decide whether that's too much or adequate for what they require?
Thank you, Councillor France.
Just having looked at some of the financial documents earlier, I think our grant for the year budget is £4,000,
Thank you. Councillor Ryan.
If you look at the brochure at the back of it, there's a list of the various councils supporting that main ones, including Wales and Frome. Obviously, this is a booklet that's already been printed, which will then in a few weeks' time, so we won't be in there as part of it does say in the brochure that we
Thank you. Councillor, members of standing order. Councillor.
I recommend that we give a total gesture to this £750.
Is there a second to that motion? Councillor Price. Anybody wish to speak against? Is there any more? Move to vote or whether you?
1.
Sorry.
I have that as 12 members for unanimous of those who can vote.
Thank you. We now wish to consider 23 to appoint a representative to the Glastonbury County Board. This representative is, of course, Councillor Tucker. Two people who speak to this, we are members of the board. We want to again. So, Councillor Mann will do something like that as well.
I understand that Councillor Michael White did a representatives last meeting and did a very good job of it. I'd like to propose that he continues to represent the Town Council on the Town Deal Board, and I'd also like to recommend that Councillor McDougall is his deputy should he need one.
So we take this one at a time, please. I think we need to just appoint the representative first, and then we talk about substitute. So Councillor Smart was proposed, Councillor White. Any other proposals or secondary? Sorry.
I'm proposing something.
Yes, of course.
I would like to propose Rick Cook, because of his long association with Paul Ledger, which is something which is very central to the Town Deal. He has great experience on that particular project, so I would very much like to put forward his name. I'd also like to point out that there are no other Conservatives members, and Conservatives in the supporters of the group.
So your comment is proportionality an issue for the Town Council?
So the Town Council is being asked to appoint a representative to the Town Deal Board. I would consider it a matter for members yourselves to consider whether proportionality is something you wish to consider. It's not a request from the Town Deal.
So we've got two councillors. We have Councillor One, Councillor Clark. We have a secondary Councillor Cook, Councillor Ogden. Now, in this situation, should it be done by, how should this be done? What's the correct way to deal with the two nominations?
I would consider, because Councillor Smythe proposed Councillor White first, that vote to be taken first, and then if that were to fail, then to take the vote, the nomination for Councillor Cook. I would take it in chronological order of when they were proposed.
Thank you. Okay, so all those in favour, Councillor White. You can that vote yourself if you wish.
I have that as 7-4.
All those against?
I have none against.
Any abstentions?
I have 4 abstentions, so I'm expecting 1 additional vote there.
So can we go through votes then? All those in favour, Councillor? Councillors, you must vote for, against, or abstain. I'm abstaining. I'm a member of the board.
I have 7-4.
Thank you. All those against?
I have none against.
All those abstaining?
Six abstentions. I'm not 100% sure though.
Have we? You're not 100% sure you counted the.
Yeah, no, I'm not. It's late. Sorry. Can I please take?
Around the table, Councillor Munn. For, against, abstain.
For
Councillor White. For. Councillor Brown.
I was abstaining.
Councillor White. For. Councillor Price. Councillor Smart. For. Councillor McDougall. Councillor Matter. I'm abstaining. Councillor For. Councillor Mann. I'm abstaining. Councillor Ogden. Councillor Ogden. Councillor Nunn. Councillor Cook.
Abstaining.
Is that?
I can't say.
Yes,
Yes.
Your Worship, yes.
Thank
I do apologise, thank you.
you. That's fine.
I'd like to propose deputy to councillor Wright as councillor Dougal.
Is there a second to that? Is there any other? Show of hands, all those in favour?
I have 8 in favour, Your Worship.
All those against? And all abstentions?
I have 6 abstentions.
Thank you very much. We now move on to receive reports from outside bodies. Connor, I would propose that we, unless there's a burning report, we should go on to the next item.
Yes, Your Worship, I haven't got anything to report on behalf of any outside bodies.
So, there are no announcements, are there any communications?
Yes, if I may, Your Worship. If I can just announce to members that we are advertising the vacancy for the additional community services officer, so please feel free when you're out and about in the community or you get queries to advertise that or share it on social media. Personal specification of the advert is available, either will be on our websites, not yet, indeed.com or via the Glastonbury Information Centre. And my only other announcement, which I announced earlier, was the unbudgeted income received or going to be received from Mendip District Council.
Thank you, Tony. Mine, Simon, are there any announcements or communications from councillors? So now we're on to correspondence. Do you have any questions?
If I may, yes, Your Worship, I have received an invitation for yourself, the Deputy Mayor, councillors and myself to the annual Anglican pilgrimage on Saturday the 9th of July. So I have forwarded that invite to Scarlett. So if there are any members who wish to attend the annual Anglican pilgrimage on Saturday the 9th of July, please get in touch with Scarlett in the office, admin@glastonbury.gov.uk, and she will coordinate members and return that information to the Bishop.
May I ask the Mayfairers, have you gone to this before? Have a memory of actually having the Mayfairers in?
We have the Anglican one followed by the Catholic one.
It was on Sunday.
Yes, okay, so
I will be there.
you won't be there. But we should have, so it's robes for Mayfairers. If you go come and
Yes.
robes, okay, thank you.
Thank you. I haven't received any communication about the Catholic pilgrimage, but I do believe a road closure has been granted for it, but I've not heard anything from the organisers.
News release, longest time. Is there any suggestion for what we should put out as news release?
What about on the civic reception or is that private?
I think that there's going to be a press release after you.
Okay.
Could we have a news release that we are interested in pursuing the United States for the town? And it would be a short press release, there's plenty of stuff to pull out before reading. Do you happy with that? Alright. So we move on to actions arising from the meeting. Connor, I trust that you have a full list of the actions we're moving on to next time.
Thank you, Your Worship.
In accordance with the Public Bodies Commission to the Meeting Act 1960, I am asking the press and the public to be excluded